Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Good to see you on this Monday morning. It's the 25th of September, 6 o'clock is the time, and you're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Yes, thank you for your company. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Army's called in as London's firearms officers hand in their weapons in protest over a colleague being charged with murder. The Home Secretary says officers must not fear ending up in the dock for carrying out their duties.
More than 100 police officers have stepped back from their duties in the Metropolitan Police. This comes, of course, as the Home Secretary looks to review the whole process. I'll have the very latest.
Tom, live there from the Lib Dem conference. The UK government's calling on Western leaders to work together to combat the migrant crisis. But what are the solutions this morning? We are live from Portland, the home of the UK's migrant barge. And also, we're live in Lampedusa. Lampedusa is a small Italian island overwhelmed with migrants.
In other news, shoplifters have stolen over £15 million from charity shops alone in the past year. That's an 80% rise. So we're asking, why has the problem got out of control?
And Craig Snell, he's the man with the weather.
Good morning. It was a rather mixed picture over the weekend. Will the weather stay unsettled this week? Find out in a little bit.
And as always, Paul Coit is here with the latest from the world of sport.
Yes, morning. End-to-end North London derby ends up in a draw. Newcastle score 8 and Wales are the first team into the World Cup quarter-finals after smashing Australia yesterday.
OK, and while you two are there, let me ask you, which areas of the country have the highest reported amounts of shoplifting?
Oh, gosh.
Which tops the league?
OK, randomly, I'm going to say Cornwall.
Cornwall?
Why Cornwall?
Well, I automatically wanted to say the north, and then I felt like I was being, all southern about it.
I'll go north then.
Yeah, you go.
I'll go north. I'll have Newcastle.
Oh, not far off.
Oh, I'm miles off.
Leeds, way ahead, way ahead. The most reported incidents of shoplifting in the past 10 years, nearly 18,000 cases in Leeds, followed by Cardiff, which are 5,000 behind that, Westminster, Birmingham, Manchester, then Newcastle.
Well, I wasn't even in the top 10.
No, Leicester, Bradford, City of London, and then Kingston upon Hull.
That was like Alan Freeman who did that there.
Actually, it's a league of shame. It has to be said.
League of shame.
But why is it happening? And what are the reasons behind all of this? It isn't just opportunism, is it?
Well, that's the thing. Is it a league of shame or is it a league of desperation? We're asking the questions. We want to hear from you. Get in touch the usual ways. gbnews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
Leading the news this morning, a review into armed policing has been launched by the Home Secretary as large numbers of firearms officers have handed in their weapons in protest. Military personnel could now be drafted in to provide cover in London.
Well, the protest is in reaction to a firearms officer being charged with murdering an unarmed man, Chris Carber, in London last year. At the time of the inquest, his family said they wouldn't rest until they got justice.
My cousin Chris was very much loved by us. His loss is with us every day. He had a bright future ahead of him. His first child was about to be born. That his life was cut short by a police officer is a tragedy. We will not rest until the people responsible for Chris's death are held fully accountable.
To explain more, our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, on this one. Tom.
Yes, it's an extraordinary situation whereby more than 100 officers in the Metropolitan Police have laid down their weapons, have refused to go on duty as armed officers after the charging of this one officer, who is not at this stage being named, for the murder of Chris Carber. Now, it is important to note that there are contingencies in place across the Metropolitan Police, something known as military aid to the civil authorities. In effect, the army has agreed to step in, particularly for counter-terrorism cases that would normally be taken on by armed police, because there is now this deficit in officers. But responding last night, the Home Secretary said in a statement that we depend on our brave firearms officers to protect us from the most dangerous and violent in society. She continued, in the interest of public safety, they have to make split-second decisions under extraordinary pressures. They mustn't fear ending up in the dock for carrying out their duties. Officers risking their lives to keep us safe have my full backing, and I'll do everything in my power to protect them. She went on to say that a review has been launched now into the role of armed policing and protections for the officers. So very clearly here, the Home Secretary coming down on the side of police officers, and this has drawn criticism from some quarters, some legal quarters, saying that she is stepping on the toes of the courts. After all, it's the courts that have charged this particular officer for this murder, and really it's an interesting place to find ourselves in terms of what happens next. Where does the Labour Party place itself on this issue? What are we going to hear as a result of this review, and how long will this review take? These are all unanswered questions at this stage.
OK, Tom, thank you very much. Hearing from Tom throughout the programme today. He's live at the Lib Dem conference. Where's that being held?
I feel like it's on the coast somewhere. Is it Bournemouth?
Bournemouth.
Yeah, Bournemouth.
OK.
It's the first one of the season. The conference season is upon us, so brace yourself for that. Meanwhile, in other news this morning, the Bibby Stockholm is set to reopen to asylum seekers, possibly as early as this week. This is after receiving the all-clear from Legionella bacteria.
Our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody now explains the community of Portland is tired, frustrated and turning on each other. Have a look at this.
Another cruise ship docks in Portland, its passengers spilling out onto the streets to buy souvenirs.
And this is what greets them when they arrive. A town that's on its feet and marching. A town that's divided. A town that's angry.
Two rival protest groups, united in wanting the barge gone, divided in every other way possible. And they're turning on each other. Dr. Susan Phoenix is from No to the Barge.
People were there doing their best for their community, they thought, and suddenly they would get something really horrid written onto the Facebook account that had no relation to anything or anybody. But of course, it's a good way of shutting down arguments. So, oh, you're a racist, oh, you're a Nazi, oh, you're this, that, and the other. And people go, oh, am I? And so they take a while to realise, no, they're not. So that local people are bullying each other. And they don't even realise they're doing it, you know, which is very sad.
Alex Bailey headed up the No to the Barge campaign. He's taken a step back because he says the online abuse has become unbearable.
Deeply upsetting. It has affected me personally, emotionally. To be called things that, quite frankly, it's awful.
Teresa Churchill fears for her community.
The division is growing deeper by the week. We're seeing different protesting groups coming into town, people being bussed in, then they disappear, go home away from Portland, and leave the community even deeper divided.
And that division is playing out on social media.
Cloning of people's Facebook accounts, malicious emails and texts. I want to say I'm shocked. And I don't think there's another word for it, Jeff. I am shocked, because why are people behaving like this in a civilized society?
We're not built for it. We're not built for the constant harassment, the constant attacks on social media.
GB News has repeatedly asked the Stand Up to Racism campaign for comment. They have so far refused. Off camera, they tell me I'm giving voice to racists. I'm only presenting one side of the story. But they won't tell me their side. The divisions, the bitterness, have been festering here for months. And not a single migrant lives on the barge. The Bibby Stockholm, at the centre of so much fear and hate, remains empty. But that could change any day now. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Dear, well, Stand Up to Racism really ought to tune in and watch the programme and see how we give balance throughout it, as is the legal responsibility of any broadcaster. So they can't accuse us of that. I take objection to that, personally.
So your views are very, very welcome. Thank you to Jeff for that report. Many migrants that come into this country, though, are from Africa. But the first port of call into Europe is the tiny island of Lampedusa.
Yes, and that's where there are now more migrants than locals. And our Home and Security editor, Mark White, will be live there for us in just under an hour.
The time now is 10 minutes past 6. A very good morning to you wherever you're watching or listening from. Now, you have a question you'd like to put out to people.
So I want to ask people this morning what random facts that you carry around in your back pocket, and email them in and amaze and amuse us, because yesterday I was sitting at the lunch table with Eamonn and my son, and we were having a lovely chat, and out of nowhere my son announced that octopuses had three hearts and that they had
blue blood.
Random facts, had no idea where he'd learnt them, and we looked it up and he was absolutely right. And in response, Eamonn came out with...
Vulcans of blue blood. That's
I sat there thinking, why do you two know these strange facts? Where has this come from? It knocked me sideways. I couldn't believe it.
Right, so here's the sort of fact, here's the sort of nonsense. I don't know I know things until I'm in a quiz or something, right? But for instance, which is bigger?
Oh, no.
Across Australia or the moon in width?
Well, I'd instantly say the moon, obviously, but now you're making me think Australia, because
it's Australia.
Well, that is a good fact. OK, so these are the kinds of facts
No, that's not a good fact. What is a good fact?
Oh, right, OK.
What's a good fact is, like, when I was very young, I learnt how to kill vampires. That's a useful fact.
Yes.
Garlic is there, holy water, crucifixes, sunlight.
You're a good Catholic boy.
Fire.
Yeah.
It's very, very important. I used to lie in bed at night thinking, well, if a vampire came into this room, how would I get rid of it?
I was going down the facts line.
That is a fact.
A little bit more than Eamonn.
How do you kill a werewolf? You would not know how to kill a werewolf.
Lights on.
No, it has to be silver. You have to have a silver bullet.
There you go. I did know that.
Silver, and that's how you kill a witch as well.
Yeah, or drown them. That's the other thing. No, actual fact, like having a gin and tonic...
That is an actual fact.
Having a gin and tonic stops you getting bitten by mosquitoes.
Does it?
Because of the quinine in the tonic water. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So what have you got? Give us your best factoids this morning. Amaze and amuse us. It makes us smile on a Monday morning. I just couldn't believe my son came out with this. Who knew octopuses, is that the correct term? 3 hearts and blue blood. I don't even know what a Vulcan is, if I'm honest, but I didn't want to sound any more stupid than I already did.
Vulcan.
It's a what?
Mr. Spock's a Vulcan.
Oh, right, OK.
Yeah. Live long and prosper.
Right, gotcha.
What's the only organ in the human body that floats?
Oh, my. I don't know.
Your lungs.
What's the biggest organ?
Well, that depends. That's different for different...
Holmes, 6:13. Too early for that. The truth is, your skin.
Yes.
If you stretched your skin out, it would fill a tennis court.
Would it?
Yeah, I believe. Anyway, what have you got for us? Make us smile. I'm really looking forward to seeing these this morning. I like a little fact.
Yes,
quiz.
Please do that. So if you've just joined us, you're tuned into GB News with your TV, online and on your radio as well. I think it's a good time for a reminder of the top stories with the time of 14 minutes past 6.
The Home Secretary has launched a review into armed policing after officers have stepped back from duties over the charging of an officer who killed an unarmed man in London last year.
The Home Secretary is preparing to call on Western leaders to work together to combat the migrant crisis. We're live in Lampedusa today, Italian island, after 7 o'clock. It hosts more migrants than actually people who were born there and lived there by right.
Also coming up, we'll be taking a look at all the big stories of the day in the newspapers and online, and that includes the future of HS2. Lots of rumours doing the rounds that perhaps Rishi Sunak may be about to exit. Your views on that very welcome as well.
We want to get your views if all these warnings about HS2 are right. It would run from Birmingham somewhere into North London or something. What is the point? Really, what is the point?
Well, there's a decent line there already. It's the bit beyond that was really needed, and that's partly already been scrapped.
It's levelling up. I mean, if this government are true to levelling up, what on earth are they playing at? And think of the money that will be squandered, absolutely wasted on this, that has been invested into it already. And then what happens with east-west, you know, from Liverpool over to Leeds, without HS2 culminating in Manchester. The whole thing is a mess. Do we plough on and spend more money, or do we cut our losses and run? That's the question we're asking you this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com. So many questions.
So many questions for you. You're going to be busy on the emails. We look forward to it. In other news, experts have warned that Britain is facing a shoplifting epidemic that is so widespread that many businesses are actually at risk of closing.
Well, that's how bad it is. It's hard to think of a time when shoplifting was as rampant as this. Supermarkets are now placing security tags on food items.
Meanwhile, a poll of UK charities has found that shoplifters have stolen over £15 million of stock.
That's just from charity shops, right? That's just charity shops, nothing else. Are these thefts being taken seriously enough? Joining us for analysis is the consumer journalist Harry Wallop. Harry, you recently spent a day at your local co-op branch, and what's the situation there?
Yeah, I spent a day actually up in Liverpool at a co-op convenience store, which has had 1,000 instances of either shoplifting or their workers being abused in this year alone. And, you know, across the whole retail industry, it's estimated that nearly £1 billion worth of goods have been stolen over the year. So, you know, this is a horrendous level of shoplifting, and there's all sorts of reasons why it's getting so bad. But, you know, one of them is that essentially the crime was downgraded a few years ago, back in 2014. And it's not considered a major offence. Anything less than £200 worth of goods stolen is considered something that should only be dealt with in the magistrates' court, and something that, you know, you'll only get a fine for.
Do you know, is it bigger than this, just a question of thievery? Because there must be a terrible social crisis that is forcing people into this. I know we could either just say it's wrong and you're not allowed to do it, which I totally get. A lot of people will say that. But then part of me looks at what is actually forcing people who wouldn't normally do this to do it, Harry.
Okay, so if you speak to the shopkeepers, and after spending a day in the co-op, I would agree with them. The people who are doing the stealing are not doing it to put food on their own table. They are not desperate people who are hungry. That's just nonsense. However, the cost of living crisis has undoubtedly meant that there is a far larger market for these stolen goods. So the things that are being stolen have a resale value, and they may only be packs of butter or steaks or Mars bars, but they are being stolen in large quantities, and they're not being eaten by the people doing the stealing, but they are then being stolen, you know, they are being sold on down the local pub or a car boot sale. And of course, that market is far larger because of course, people are feeling the pinch, and they are far more likely to say, yes, I will buy those slightly dodgy packs of ham that you're offering me with someone else's logo on. So, I mean, that is, you know, the cost of living crisis is undoubtedly a very large factor.
And Harry, the other angle in all of this is the staff who are having to be confronted with this day in, day out. I've just had an email in. This is from Audrey Lear. My daughter is a shop worker in a small Tesco's who are continually targeted. The shelves are literally cleared of certain items, and now they only put out 2 items per product, i.e. coffee, washing powder, or anything else they're now known. And the assistant who follows them with body cameras, and then the thieves taunt them by threatening behaviour and telling them not to put their hands on them. I mean, that makes it difficult to have a very, to be honest, modestly paid job in a cost of living crisis. Absolutely essential to have that job.
Isabel, that's
yourself in harm's way.
Very, very true. But I'll also say this about supermarkets, Harry. They've made a rod for their own back. They're the people who want us to do their work now. For instance, so we check out ourselves. We fill our own baskets. We run our goods past the till ourselves. I mean, surely that is just begging for people to commit wrong.
I think there is an element of this that low shop worker numbers means it's easier to steal stuff. But, you know, the store I was in, you can have a security guard. You know, you can have a private security guard at the door. You can have the shop manager with cameras on them, and the thieves will just ignore them, because it has become a consequenceless crime. You know, they know that if they steal, and even if the private security guard were to detain them, as they're entitled to do, and wait for the police to come, in 8 out of 10 times, the police will not come. The police are both too stretched and not actually interested in what they consider to be a minor crime. So, you know, that's the real problem. I mean, undoubtedly, yes, over the last few years, the fact that there are self-checkout tills and there are fewer shop staff on the floor, that has bred a culture where shoplifting has become more normalised.
Harry, amazing. And while you were talking, we were watching CCTV footage of basically a guy clearing shelves. It looked like a weekly shop he was putting in the bag there. And obviously, as you say, there is a market for that down the pub or whatever else. It's not simple. It's something, Harry, hopefully we're going to talk to you again later. We're going to get reaction to this in the programme today. Maybe even if someone has stolen, we won't obviously give your identity or whatever, but tell us why, what forced you to do this. Or as Harry is saying, is it just opportunism? Is it just a way to make extra money? Thanks for the moment, Harry. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to return to that, but we're now going to return to the weather situation. And there's another stupid name for a storm.
Storm Agnes. Just another storm, but I think Northern Ireland's going to get the worst battering from that.
It doesn't matter what it's called, there's a storm coming. Anyway, here's Craig.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, we will see some sunnier and brighter moments, but watch out for Wednesday. Could turn very windy for some of us. Back to the here and now, lots of sunshine out there actually across parts of England and Wales. Still maybe a little bit of overnight rain and cloud just to clear the very far southeast, but for most of us really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the main bulk of the showers, and some of these could potentially be quite heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder, and still quite windy here. That will temper the temperatures somewhat, but down towards the southeast, feeling quite warm, highs reaching 22 or 23 degrees. Into the evening, a lot of England and Wales remaining dry. Still the risk of some showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland, especially across more western areas. Elsewhere, under the clear skies, we could see some mist and fog also forming. And then later on in the night, just starting to potentially see some heavy showers working in across the very far south coast of England. A mild night for all of us, temperatures staying firmly in double figures. So these showers will then track their way northwards across parts of England as we go through the course of the morning. Elsewhere, once any early mist and fog clears, briefly drier and brighter, but then further bands of rain moving in from the west, which will be accompanied again by some fairly strong winds, heaviest of the rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But despite the wind, it's going to be another fairly mild one. Temperatures high teens in the north, low 20s in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The facts are coming in thick and fast. If you divide the number of seconds Mozart lived by the number of musical notes he composed, the result is 4. Hence, on average, every 4 seconds of his life, he wrote a note of music.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. This one, if you wrap toilet paper around your head 3 times, the length of the paper will be your exact height.
No.
You see, I haven't fact-checked any of this. I'm just reading it out as wrote. And just one more. Good morning to you both. You cannot touch your nose with your elbow. I'd love to watch you try, he says.
Oh, well, that's true, but why would you want to touch your nose with your elbow? I tell you what else you can't do. Right, hum. Hum. Right, now hold your nose and hum. Can't do it.
It's ridiculous.
Can't do it. See?
I love it when we go down these little routes. We've also had a really nosy email. I want to know what you had for lunch at Isabel's yesterday and who else was there.
Well, I tell you what we had. It was just an intimate lunch between Isabel and I. Her husband wasn't at home. It was very good.
It was I was missing my husband, so I got my telly husband round.
And she prepared a beautiful lasagna.
I did.
And she had a certain way of doing this because your ingredients, there was carrot, there was celery, there were onions.
Yeah, that's the Holy Trinity, the base of any kind of ragu I make, has always got those 3 in.
Well,
something about the chemicals.
My wife doesn't do it that way.
Well, yeah, apparently it's what the Italians do.
But
I don't know.
It was very nice.
All right.
It was very nice. To be then followed by the apple crumble.
Oh, yeah.
and the custard that came with it. I was given the option of hot or cold custard. I sort of stuck my neck out a bit and said, what about some custard and vanilla ice cream? But that wasn't offered to me. That didn't happen.
Didn't have any ice cream.
No, but it was plentiful.
You missed the important part.
What? Which was?
The apples were from the garden.
Oh, yeah.
That was the whole point, and you didn't get food poisoning. As he was leaving, he said, if I get food poisoning from your apples, I thought, how rude.
No, she's what are people who do that? They're called scavengers or scroungers or...
No, they're called gardeners.
Well, it was very good. It was very, very nice the way it was done. Very, very, very rustic. Very, very nice.
Right.
Good. OK, the time is now 6:25, still to come.
Yes, stalemate at the North London Derby. Paul Coit will be here with all the sports. That's next.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 6:28. Welcome to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Let's have a look at some of the stories coming into the newsroom this morning. Today, it's been reported NHS appointment cancellations are set to exceed a total of 1 million following joint strikes by the doctors, the junior doctors and the consultants. The walkout reduced the NHS to a Christmas Day service, with health leaders calling the situation damaging and demoralising, and warned there is a human cost.
In response to rising costs, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is reportedly considering delaying the Birmingham to Manchester leg of HS2. The Prime Minister has been warned, however, that scrapping it to Manchester would be a gross act of vandalism. Those were the words of his predecessor, George Osborne.
A policeman and 3 gunmen were killed yesterday during a siege of a Serbian monastery in northern Kosovo. Kosovan and Serbian authorities have accused each other of being at fault for the deaths. The clash is one of the most serious escalations in Kosovo in years. Now, there was so much sport over the weekend, which is why we have Paul Coit on 3 times this morning. This roundup, I think we'll deal with football. And look, the first thing is, for Newcastle in the Premier League to hit 8 past Sheffield United, that's monumental.
Well, it is. I mean, 8 goals away from home as well. And you know what is really monumental is the fact that there were 8 different goal scorers. What are the chances?
Yeah,
what are the chances?
That's true.
There's Longstaff and Byrne and Botman and Wilson and Gordon and Almiron and Guimaraes and Isak scored. So there's only 3 left that actually didn't score a goal. And you know what? There's nothing worse than that. Not that I've ever been on the end of such a huge beating, but then when the momentum starts turning against you, and then there's another one, and then there's another one, and then there's another one. It's just one of those. Sometimes you can call them freak results when there's 8 goals scored. Biggest win since 1999 for Newcastle. And it was another Sheffield team. Sheffield Wednesday was the last time they did it. So what are the chances? Yeah, 2 Sheffields. 2 Sheffield teams.
Humiliating, though, for Sheffield United.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. 2 other worthy Premier League results to talk about.
Yeah.
Arsenal 2, Tottenham 2.
Yeah.
I would have thought you each would have been probably quite happy with that.
I think so. I think quite happy with that. I'm exhausted today because of the game. I was so... This is the thing. This is how it can see... You know what it's like. Completely consumes you. I was so nervous I went along to the Emirates. And I was so nervous about how the game was going to be. And everyone's going, oh, yeah, Spurs are going to get smashed, Spurs are going to get beaten. So they're worried about it. And then you sit through the game. You can't enjoy it, can you? Because you're sort of sitting like this the whole time. But it was a really, really good game. And Arsenal went ahead and through an own goal, then Heung-min Son scores, and then a dodgy penalty.
Yeah, an own goal and a penalty. I mean, you know, the Spurs goals seem to be more worthwhile.
Yeah, we didn't need any penalties. See, now I'll be honest, a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, it shouldn't have been given as a penalty because it was one of these, the arm was up. I mean, I think it was a penalty.
Yeah.
And then straight down the other end.
Too far from his
body,
really.
I mean, I'll let that go, but 2-2. Spurs are very good. This is the difference now. They're going out to Arsenal, whereas before...
Without Harry Kane, this is
no
amazing.
Harry Kane, exactly. But it's all this Ange Postecoglou style of football, which is just terrific to watch.
Unai Emery at Villa, I think he's a very good manager. They got a win at Stamford Bridge yesterday. Doesn't look good for Chelsea losing like that, but Villa are a good team.
They are. I mean, they are a good team, but really we're looking at Chelsea because in 2023, calendar year, 6 wins in all competitions. They got 25 points, same as Everton. They spent £1 billion, and a lot of fans are going, oh, this is terrible, we've got to change the board. They're throwing money at it, but it just ain't working yet. But as far as Mauricio Pochettino is concerned, now he's a manager that is going to need time. And they have to give him time because I do believe that it will work out all right at the end. But it's going to take time. Worst start, though, for 45 years for Chelsea. So disaster there.
Have you any interesting or useless facts for us this morning?
I've just given you all of them. I've just given you everything.
But a lot of people would say they were all useless.
Absolutely. But not you, Isabel.
Not me.
But
I'm a big football fan.
Did you know that if your arm stretched out like that is actually within an inch your height?
Crazy.
No.
So if you go like that... But the thing is, I have extraordinarily long arms for my height. So monkey arms. I've got arms that are slightly longer, so I would be about 6'3". But most people, if you go like that and you measure, it's within an inch.
So you
should be your height.
an exception to the rule.
I am the only freak of nature exception to the rule when it comes to the arm. But if your arm's out around that should be exactly the same height.
Good fact.
How many points do I get for the fact?
A lot.
Thank you very much.
I'm really enjoying these facts. A few more. Dolphins come out tails first when being born, says Simon. I love that.
What is he, a marine biologist?
Well, we've got another one. Michelle says elephants are the only mammals on Earth with 4 knees.
Really?
It does make you think, doesn't it? I love stuff.
So do dogs and cats and things not have 4 knees?
No, because they have haunches, don't they? They have these back things. I don't know, I'm no vet, but...
Interesting.
Look, this makes you think.
Crisps always go out of date on a Saturday, says Joanne. Not sure about that.
Is that true?
Well, there we go.
I haven't fact-checked it, but I'm enjoying it.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Paul. See you back in an hour's time. OK, 6:34 is the time. If you just joined us, a reminder of the top stories.
The Home Secretary is launching a review into armed policing after officers have stepped back over the charging of the officer who killed an unarmed man in London last year.
The Home Secretary is preparing to call on Western leaders to work together to combat the migrant crisis. This morning, GB News is live in Lampedusa, an Italian island. Full coverage because there are more migrants there than there are natives off the island.
And also, shoplifters are revealed to have stolen more than £15 million from charity shops alone in the past year. It's an 80% rise.
It's looking like the government will axe HS2's northern leg within Des. That's coming up. We're going to be discussing that in Headline Makers.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Too much fun being had in the newsroom. It must mean headline makers are inbound, but we're going to start by looking at the front of the Monday morning newspapers.
Yeah.
Here's the Telegraph.
Telegraph, first of all, leading with this story that the Army is going to be called in to replace armed police officers. This was after a walkout in protest, and we're going to be discussing this in the programme today. This is the decision to charge one of the police officers with murder.
The Guardian is also featuring that story, adding that the Home Secretary has ordered a review of armed policing in the face of growing anger. Lots of controversy about her getting involved when a case is active. Could it be contempt?
What's that picture? Is that one of those?
It's a meerkat.
A meerkat?
Yeah. There's a theory they can pick up on the mood of things. Do you know my brother studied meerkats for a year in the Kalahari Desert?
Really?
Yeah, he did. Anyway,
is he normal?
Random fact.
But then there was a
whole...
zoologist,
Biggins.
There was that whole TV series, The Meerkat Kingdom, or whatever. It was on every week.
Yeah. I filmed it, I think.
Let's go to the Mail.
Anyway.
And it reports that convicted rapists will be forced to serve full sentences as part of a gear change on crime being introduced by the Prime Minister.
And on the front of the Metro, the headline, 24 hours in A&E, now a reality, as they report that almost 400,000 patients were kept waiting over a day in hospital in the last year.
The Metro, should tell you about the Metro, just come back to us here. The Metro are getting very excited or alarmed that I said jokingly in an interview that I would drink horse pee if it cured my back. So they're saying this is the extraordinary lengths that I would go to. But obviously very short of news. Overall.
Is horse pee good then for your back?
No idea.
It was a joke.
The point being that you would do anything if it took away the pain.
I see, right, yes.
But it was clickbait, so don't let...
I am stupid. You say it so realistically, though.
Well, obviously it duped the Metro as well. There we go. Eamonn Holmes drinks horse pee. That's the length. He searches the world for various strengths of horse pee to cure his pain in his back.
I know a good horse.
The Mirror, Marcus Rashford, the Manchester United winger, he crashed his car.
Not just any car, a £700,000 Bentley, was it? Or Rolls-Royce?
Rolls-Royce it was, yeah. But he's unhurt.
Wow.
That's okay.
Yeah, car's not in
so join us to go through, you've already been introduced to Christopher Biggins, who can't ignore here today. And they've got Ella Whelan, who's giving her views on things as well. Biggins,
yes.
HS2 levelling up. So basically it looks as though they're preparing us for the northern leg to be axed. What's your view?
Well, you can't have a project like this go so much over budget, it's not true, without looking at it and thinking, is this right?
But how much are they going to lose? How much is going to be wasted in terms of preparation?
A huge amount.
A huge amount.
Huge amount. But then can we go on spending? I mean, they've already ruined forests and beautiful countryside in order to put this in, to make it faster.
Well, it's not going to get those forests back, is it?
It certainly isn't. So you think we should go on ahead?
Definitely. Definitely, absolutely.
Even though the costs are absolutely astronomical.
Because they'll find other ways to waste that money, believe me. There's
That's
ways...
true, I suppose.
There's a sort of continuation of thought that if they're scrapping all of their climate pledges because of costs, then I guess HS2 has to go as well.
No. One of the most eco-friendly type things you can do is travel by train.
Yeah. But it's just, it's this argument that we've got no money now, so we're scrapping everything that's, supposed to be good for the economy or good for the planet.
Well, if I was in the North, Ella, I would be... As a matter of fact, I have family connections and I've lived in Manchester for 7 years, and I'm quite angry on behalf of people in the Northwest for this.
Yeah, it's just an obvious failure. And I think it's quite outrageous on the front page of the Times. They've got some quotes from Grant Shapps that this potential climb down on HS2 is being framed as a responsible act. We're very responsible because we shouldn't be wasting money, so we're going to potentially stop it now. So that's not responsible. It's your failing that you haven't done it. I mean, HS2 was criticised initially because obviously there was a huge amount of money, and it's ridiculous that it's gone so over budget, has been spent when actually a lot of the North needs sort of smaller scale interconnective kind of lines put in. But I mean, I think we should have had HS2, HS3, HS10. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We need better infrastructure, better transport, especially if this government is going to be, or potentially a Labour government, is going to be sort of cracking down on car usage.
How do we pay for it? We're already being taxed to the absolute hilt.
Scrap the foreign aid budget, that's how we pay for it.
I mean, that probably wouldn't raise enough money to go
11
anywhere
billion.
near it. But you need a booming economy. You need a plan for a booming... It's not an easy policy issue. You need a big visionary plan to boost the economy, which unfortunately this government doesn't have.
Meanwhile, this story in The Guardian this morning, Ellen, big news doing the rounds yesterday. John Caldwell, he actually donated the most to the Tory party before the last election, has said, given Rishi Sunak's U-turn on green policies, he will not back the Conservatives. And at the same time, on the same day, yesterday, Donald Trump came out saying Prime Minister Sunak he always knew he was clever and that he wasn't going to destroy or bankrupt the economy for fake climate alarmism.
Yeah, pick your rich guy.
So
Which one do you listen to?
Sunak's going in the Trump camp that climate change is a hoax, or at least Trump's wanting him to frame it like that.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that the Caldwell sort of intervention is telling, because we had that sort of statement from Ford as well before the Prime Minister gave his speech. There is this sort of muscling in from rich guys, from big business, to say, how dare you, and Caldwell says, I care very much about the environment, I'm such a lovely man, I think that, that the future is important.
We should say he's phones for you, isn't he? He made a fortune on phones.
Yeah. Yeah, and is now saying, having said previously that he doesn't think Keir Starmer's charismatic, not interested at all, he's now saying that he's flexibly minded and might go to the Labour Party. I mean, nobody elected Caldwell, he's just a donor, and I think we should keep that, as much as I think that there is a debate to be had about net zero. I do think it leaves a bit of a bad taste in the mouth, all these rich guys muscling in with their opinions.
I think it's important, though, Christopher, not to mix up Trump's accusation that climate change doesn't exist with the pace that measures are being brought in and what it's costing people. They're two different things. I saw a terrible report at the weekend about the biggest single pollutant in the seas is what?
Plastic.
Nope. It's rubber.
Right.
Right.
Rubber.
And rubber. This is a new one that they've found. So when they dig down into the silt and whatever, they see that it is the single biggest contaminant in the seas. And do you know where it comes from?
No.
Tires. So when you're on a road or motorway or whatever and you brake, rubber flies off your tyre and it goes to the road, and it's the rain comes down and it's drained away into ditches and whatever, and it all ends up in the sea eventually.
How amazing!
Yeah, so that's quite worrying when you think about it, as to what you would ever do with that and whatever could be done about that. But I think it is this balance of climate change, how we deal with it, how we protect the earth, and the speed and the cost that it is putting on people's shoulders.
But it's not an easy situation, though, is it? It's not something we can, do overnight. Or however much money we throw at it, it's going to be there because people just don't do the right thing by, so what do? Do we get cars now that don't need tyres that come off? I mean, there's so many answers to these questions, which I don't know whether they'll ever be, in our lifetime, be resolved.
Well, look, we're going to go through some more papers in a second, but with the time at 7:15 exactly, we're going to give you an update on our headlines this morning.
The Home Secretary launches a review into armed policing after officers step back over the charging of a policeman who killed an unarmed man in London last year. We'll be speaking to the Government Minister Rachel McLean shortly.
The Crown Prosecution Service is to decide whether the child killer, Lucy Letby, will face a fresh trial over convictions that the jury failed to reach a verdict on in her recent trial, and we'll be looking into exactly why later on.
Also after 7, as the Home Secretary is preparing to call on Western leaders to work together over the migrant crisis, we'll be investigating just what solutions there are out there, if any.
So, from horse pee to A&E, what are the Metro saying, Christopher Biggins, this morning?
They're saying, bring on the horses. My kingdom for a horse. Well, they're saying almost 400,000 patients were kept waiting over a day in hospitals last year. So now A&E this is a reality now in A&E. But, what are we going to do? We've got strikes. We've got so many things going against it. I mean, if I had the money, and I'm sure all of us, if we had the money, would give nurses and doctors everything they want. But I do think what they're asking for is a rather lot of money. Is it 38%?
35, yeah.
35. I mean, I think that's a lot. In considering the crises that we're in. But anyway, that doesn't help the fact that, well, I suppose it does, because the strikes have to be affecting the fact that some of the 400,000 patients are not being looked after.
Yeah, and this ties in with the story on the front of the Telegraph alert this morning. Official figures out later today are expected to show the true impact of those joint strikes that we saw last week. More joint strikes planned for during the Conservative Party conference, very deliberate from the BMA there, but expected to top a million appointments axed during strikes as a total.
Yes, strikes have an effect. That's why in some cases they work. They are supposed to be disruptive, and obviously that's a particularly emotive issue when it's related to healthcare. I'm in favour of the strikers. I think that probably the number one priority of a national health service should be to make sure that its workers are paid properly and are ready for the job and feeling good and content in their work. But
the number one priority, over and above the safety and the health of the patients. Well, the doctors feel happy and.
Well, it's that the doctors are content and able to do their job properly. I think that there's a lot of problem rises from people either being burnt out or being, not happy in their work.
But I think patient safety as well.
The point that I want to make is that the issues with as much as the strikes have been disruptive, the issue with the NHS is not, in particular, Rishi Sunak keeps making this mistake of trying to make out like the whole problem with the NHS is based on strikes. This has been a problem for a very, very long time, particularly, in places like, there are some trusts where you have had to wait for A&E services for more than a day, for a very long time. So that's not to downplay the seriousness of what's going on at the moment, but please let's not be so short-termist about this.
Can we talk about something really happy and nice and whatever? Angela Rippon, who is often on GB News as well, 78 years of age. Biggins, have you done Strictly?
No, I could never do it.
All right, you and me both.
Far too complicated.
Ruthie's done it, hasn't she?
Who's done it?
Ruthie.
Yes.
Yeah, but
she was very good.
She's not me. She wasn't
9
very
yards.
good.
Oh, I know.
She was.
She was. Eamonn.
She lasted 8 weeks.
Yeah,
That's a long
quite
time.
good.
That's 2 months.
That was a miracle.
I thought she was terrific.
She was amazing.
Anyway,
but she wasn't. She wasn't as bendy as
Angela Rippon. Angela Rippon is 78 years of age. She is the oldest ever contestant.
Great pins.
To take part in Strictly. And what particularly impressed you, Christopher?
Well, the lifting of the leg.
Was it a real leg?
No. It was a false leg. No, Sauce was a real
Where's
leg.
the picture of the leg lifting? Come on.
There it is there.
There we go.
That's not a real leg.
It is her. She did it. I messaged you at the time, didn't I? Going, you watching this, Eamonn?
Yes,
oh my
but that's
goodness.
a false leg. It's put in there and it's made to look like a real leg.
I watched her lift it.
But her partner helped enormously.
Well, you can't be helped to.
Well, I think
do
you
the
can.
splits.
I mean,
Biggins, so then you can do it next year. We look forward to seeing it.
Angela is fantastic. I mean, she is wonderful. She's
incredible.
Incredible. And I think she'll do. And I thought last night, too, was wonderful how the audience really went for her in a big way, because she is an icon, especially in the dancing world. I mean, when you consider she presented that programme years ago, I think in Black
Morecambe
and
and
White.
Wise.
Morecambe and Wise, that's right, yes.
Yeah.
That's how she started,
That'll
wasn't
be
it?
Tess Daly in a few years' time.
Really?
Could you do that, Isabel? Look,
Yeah, you see, you watched her do it. I don't think I could go that high. No, I can do a high kick, but I don't know if I could do the full splits. And I certainly don't think I could do it at 78. We were talking about Strictly yesterday, and I was thinking, I don't know if I could do it. I feel old now. But she puts us all in
Not at all.
She reminds us.
High kicks in the so-and-so for all of you for being such doubting Thomases. I mean, seriously.
Did you do that then?
No, of course I couldn't. But I mean, Angela Rippon has been not just only, glamorous, but one of the most achieving women in television for a very long time. So I'm no doubt that she's going to show
Just looking at pictures, she actually got it up higher than she did in the Morecambe and Wise.
Really?
So, look, you see, look.
Oh, yes.
The angle there.
Unbelievable.
No, she is. She's fantastic, and I think it's great. It's interesting. Did you see Les Dennis?
Yes, dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. Nice man.
Lovely man, and but it was so funny. I mean, I laughed out loud. It was marvellous.
Do you have a favourite then besides Angela for this?
Well, I really like the boy from EastEnders, the young boy.
Oh, Bobby.
Yes.
Oh, what's his name?
Jade Goody's son.
Yeah, Jade Goody's son. Bobby something.
I think he's terrific. I think, and he's got such a lovely personality.
Sweetie, isn't he?
And actually, he was rather good, I thought.
Yeah.
On Saturday night. They got very good viewing figures, so that's good. The BBC now, another hit for them.
Yeah, it's important to...
Well, it's not another hit, it's the same hit over and over again.
Yeah, but it's a hit.
What are you Googling there? Seriously. Come on, what are you looking up? A little fact for us.
My dementia's kicked in. I just need to remind you of something. Anyway.
Should we talk about space, Ella? Space dust has come back to Earth after, what, a 7-year mission?
Yeah, well, we're in a fact mood this morning, so this is really interesting. So there's the OSIRIS-REx was sent out, OSIRIS-REx capsule was sent out to get some chunks of space rock from asteroid Bennu, which is a 4.6 billion-year-old chunk of space rock. It's taken 7 years to do that, and it's just landed yesterday in Utah. The successful return of the largest asteroid sample ever to be recovered, and the potential for what this might mean for scientific research is huge, because this, scientists hope that this particular bit of rock will help them understand the ingredients that went into making planets and how they created environments stable for life. So sort of within it might be things that are rich in carbon, water-containing minerals, and it could unlock some clues as to not just how the universe came about and what's going on those asteroids or other planets, but also the potential for future exploration and what we might do in
Once
relation
we
to
trash
planets.
this planet,
well,
go and recover somewhere
That's the
else.
pessimistic view. The optimistic view might be that, who knows what's out there, and this might get us one step closer to finding out.
I missed the landing. Was it successful? Did it land? Because I saw beforehand they said this is what's going to happen in 4 hours' time.
But the Utah desert.
Yes.
Yeah, it all came down in a parachute.
Very peaceful, seemed to be.
Really? It's amazing, isn't it? Because
it's
apparently the speed that it came in.
I thought
was
initially
huge.
it was supposed to land in the sea. This idea of landing in the desert sounds... Maybe sand is sufficiently bouncy, spongy. I don't know. I'm no scientist.
I think as long as it lands, that's all they're
happy.
Really care about there. Guys, thank you very much indeed. And Ella and Christopher will be back in about 40 minutes' time to talk about other stories that are making the news today.
In the meantime, find out whether or not you need to pack your brolly today. We're being told another storm is on the way. Here's Craig Snell from the Met Office.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, we will see some sunnier and brighter moments, but watch out for Wednesday. Could turn very windy for some of us. Back to the here and now. Lots of sunshine out there, actually, across parts of England and Wales. Still maybe a little bit of overnight rain and cloud just to clear the very far southeast. But for most of us, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the main bulk of the showers, and some of these could potentially be quite heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. And still quite windy here. That will temper the temperatures somewhat, but down towards the southeast, feeling quite warm, highs reaching 22 or 23 degrees. Into the evening, a lot of England and Wales remaining dry. Still the risk of some showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland, especially across more western areas. Elsewhere, under the clear skies, we could see some mist and fog also forming. And then later on in the night, just starting to potentially see some heavy showers working in across the very far south coast of England. A mild night for all of us, temperatures staying firmly in double figures. So these showers will then track their way northwards across parts of England as we go through the course of the morning. Elsewhere, once any early mist and fog clears, briefly drier and brighter, but then further bands of rain moving in from the west, which will be accompanied again by some fairly strong winds, heaviest of the rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But despite the wind, it's going to be another fairly mild one. Temperatures high teens in the north, low 20s in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
So, a white cat, this is from Roger, says a white cat with blue eyes is deaf. But Cornell University say that it's upwards of 65 to 85% of all white cats with both blue eyes are deaf. I'm only saying this because this is the facts that people don't know.
Yeah.
So listen at your little Hector the Protector yesterday.
My little kitten that I just got, yeah.
Wasn't I just a natural with that cat?
You knew exactly what to do. It was hilarious. My kids would not leave him alone with the kitten. And you're like, I'm not a cat person. Plonk goes the kitten.
That was it. Crawled all over me then.
Funny.
So keep those interesting facts.
There's some good ones. Did you know the space between your wrist and your elbow is the same as your shoe size? These are the kinds of facts we want.
It's the same as what?
Your shoe size. Yeah. More after this. See you in just a moment.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
all sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's just gone 7 o'clock on Monday, the 25th of September. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, the Army is called in as London's firearms officers hand in their weapons. This is a protest over a colleague being charged with murder. The Home Secretary says police officers must not fear ending up in the dock for carrying out their duties.
The UK government is calling on Western leaders to work together to combat the migrant crisis. We're asking, what are the solutions? We're live from Lampedusa, that's an island in Italy, where Mark White will be bringing you all the latest.
Well, Lampedusa is on the front line of Europe's migrant crisis. 11,000 arrived here in the past week, and we know, of course, that many of those will end up on the beaches of northwestern France trying to get to the UK.
And there are not 11,000 people who are living there permanently, so those numbers way out of balance. There's Lucy Letby. Crime Prosecution Service will decide whether she will be back in court for a fresh trial. Questions have been raised over her conviction. We'll be debating, does prejudice influence the presumption of innocence?
And we'll have your forecast with Craig Snell.
Good morning. It was a rather mixed picture over the weekend. Will the weather stay unsettled this week? Find out in a little bit.
And as always, Paul Coyte is here with the latest from the world of sport, and there was so much going on over the weekend. How are we going to pack it all in?
I don't know. I'm going to have to go really quick. So Wales destroy, embarrass and absolutely do a job on Australia in the Rugby World Cup last night. Europe retained Golf Solheim Cup, and at the risk of sounding cockney, Marcus Rashford stacks his 700 grand roller.
He did indeed. Glad that gives you joy. No mention.
It didn't give me any joy.
No mention of Bruno Fernandes' super goal against Burnley or Ireland beating South Africa.
Old news. It was Saturday. That's old news. I try to keep you up to date, Eamonn. Yeah. I do what I can for you.
Wales, that happened while I was asleep. There we go. As always, you can get involved. Lots of you have. We're really enjoying your emails this morning. Thank you for those who take the time to do it. I know you're all really busy, but gbviews@gbnews.com if you can find the time, or you can tweet us at GBNews. So it is our top story this morning. A review into armed policing has been launched by the Home Secretary as large numbers of firearms officers have handed in their weapons in protest. Military personnel could now be drafted in to provide cover in London.
This is an amazing protest when you think about it. It's in reaction to a firearms officer being charged with murdering an unarmed man, Chris Cabba, in London last year. Chris Cabba was driving an Audi car in a residential street in southeast London. He was shot in the head. His death sparked protests in the community, with his family saying they wouldn't rest until they got justice.
My cousin Chris was very much loved by us. His loss is with us every day. He had a bright future ahead of him. His first child was about to be born. That his life was cut short by a police officer is a tragedy. We will not rest until the people responsible for Chris's death are held fully accountable.
Well, let's get the thoughts of the government in all of this. We're joined by the Housing Minister this morning, Rachel Maclean, and a very good morning to you. You'll have heard that clip there from the family. And, of course, in order for the victim in all of this to have justice served, and indeed for the officer who's been charged to have a fair trial, it's very important that there is no prejudice in this case. Are you surprised, then, that a former Attorney General, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has intervened? Because presumably this outpouring from her in a letter could be used by the defence.
No, I think you need to be really clear here that it's very important that we support our extremely brave firearms officers. They have to make split-second decisions to keep the public safe, and they have our full support in doing that. But it is, of course, also completely right that the Home Secretary continues to look very carefully at the legal framework that governs their operations. As she has always done, it's her job to do that, to make sure that that balance is always right, because we cannot have these incredibly skillful professionals who are keeping people safe fearing that they might end up in the dock, and that's why she has announced the review that she has.
And yet we are where we are, with hundreds of firearm officers downing weapons and saying that they won't do their jobs effectively because they don't feel safe to do that. Are we safe in the capital? What would happen if there was a terror attack, perhaps, like there has been on the bridge behind you? We're told that the SAS and the MOD would step in, but surely they can't respond in the kind of times that we expect from our armed forces here in the capital.
So public protection is the absolute first priority of this government, and that is the Home Secretary's priority as she works through this situation. I think it's really important that your listeners know that that cooperation with the soldiers, with the Military of Defence, is very standard for the government. It's something that I've been involved with previously as a minister in different departments, and of course those are professionals. They will work with the Met Police. The soldiers will be working to keep the public safe. They won't have powers of arrest, but ultimately these are operational matters for the police, for the Met Police Commissioner, and keeping the public safe in whatever eventuality will be their first priority.
What about HS2? Lots of criticism of possible plans to scrap that northern leg from Birmingham to Manchester, not least from party grandees. George Osborne, Lord Heseltine, writing in the papers this morning, calling it an act of vandalism.
Well, look, I'm happy to answer questions on HS2, but before I do, I hope you will allow me to plug the brilliant work that's been done by the Community Ownership Fund. We're announcing this morning 45 amazing local community-led projects led by volunteers. These are really treasured assets at the heart of communities, and that is what our levelling up agenda is all about. On the back of a lot of the investment that's already gone in to level up the country, the four nations of our United Kingdom. One of them is an amazing project, really local to me. It's the Withall Transport Museum. They've got funding to renovate a Midland Red bus. And so, look, this is all part of our levelling up agenda. There's no decisions being made on HS2 yet. And I think more broadly, you can see this government's commitment to connectivity and transport across the whole country. We've put £33 billion into levelling up the north since this government has been in office, and we will continue to look at these projects that are going to boost that connectivity and economic growth all over the whole of the United Kingdom.
Minister, I think it's very nice, all these little cottage projects that you're levelling up with, but 12 million quid you're talking about here. Catch yourself on. You must be embarrassed, really, coming on talking about HS2 possibly being scrapped, and you're coming out with 12 million quid, which would buy your house in London, basically.
I think that's the wrong way of looking at it.
No, I think it's the wrong way of you looking at it. I think people like you say, we do levelling up, and then you come out and you say, we've got 12 million quid to restore a little bridge in a museum, all of which is lovely. And if it was my local council doing it, I would think that is absolutely tremendous. But you can't come out and say, this is major government policy, or this in any way reeks of levelling up, when you're depriving Manchester, you're depriving Liverpool, you're depriving Leeds of being connected to the capital.
If I can just finish and put this into context. This is one.
Not sure you started.
This is one project which comes on the back of billions of pounds of funding, levelling up funding, which has gone to the whole of the United Kingdom. Since this government has been in office, we've poured unprecedented amounts of money into local councils, including Manchester, Birmingham, with devolution partnerships, levelling up partnerships, investment zones, free ports, Towns Fund, and 16.9 million quid just going to my area of Redditch alone. So I strongly refute what you're saying. Just because this is a small fund right now, that doesn't mean that doesn't represent transformational funding for that particular community group, and some of them are absolutely delighted. The railway bridge project has said that this has made a massive difference for their community in Keighley, and we mustn't overlook that they might be small,
I do think it's a bit embarrassing.
They represent a lifetime of passion
as a defence of scrapping HS2. But listen, not for you and me to debate this. People who are watching and listening, I think they should come in and tell us if they think they're being levelled up or not. So you say they're being levelled up.
So there is no decision to... So can I just be clear? You're talking that there's a decision to scrap HS2. There is no decision.
Right. Would you be in favour of that decision?
You would obviously expect the Chancellor... You would obviously expect the Chancellor to look very carefully at these projects, which do cost billions of pounds, and he said that we do need to look at how the costs have increased over time.
Do you think it should be axed?
The project was first implemented. So this is not a decision for me. I'm the housing minister.
Well,
this is a decision for the Transport Secretary and the Chancellor. And I think you've got to look at our record. In the round, we are investing in transport infrastructure over the whole country. As I've said, since we've been in office, we've invested £33 billion on levelling up transport in the north. That's investment into buses, investment into roads. All of these things are vital elements of the package of levelling up that this government has been responsible for. Unprecedented amounts of funding that have gone to councils, not only just in the north and the regions, in my area, in Redditch, as I've already said, but also around the whole of the United Kingdom. And this is having a transformational difference on the ground to people.
Yeah, but my question was, what do you think? I know it's not your responsibility and you may not have ultimate say on whether or not that is, but we've heard what Lord Heseltine thinks, we've heard what George Osborne thinks. They think it's an act of vandalism if they were to scrap this northern leg. What is your view, was my question.
Well, I think there will always be people who are going to make comments about a project of this scale.
What is your
view? It's a significant infrastructure project for the country, and I would like to see, obviously, what the Chancellor is going to do. I mean, it is his responsibility to look at the pressures on the public finances in the round. He has to balance the books. He has to think about the NHS. He has to think about schools and hospitals more broadly. So, you know, I'm sure that he will be coming forward with those decisions soon, and we will wait to see what he decides to do at the next fiscal event.
Okay. Rachel Maclean.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel Maclean. Rachel is an MP and she's the Minister for Housing as well. Rachel talks about unprecedented levels of funding. That's because they didn't fund anything before that. That's why it's unprecedented. So when you're levelling up, what are you levelling up against? You're pushing against an open door. The levelling up situation, I think if you live, you know, wherever you are, Newcastle, Scarborough, Carlisle, Leeds, Manchester, wherever, Blackburn, you know, what does it mean to you? Is she talking sense? Do you see the fruits of government labours in all of this, or is it just talk? Do you see your area being levelled up or not?
Are you in favour of paying for it? Because that is obviously, they've got to balance the books. We know that HS2 is eye-wateringly expensive. We've seen inflation. The price of it has gone exponentially up in the last few years. However, it's incredibly short-term not to invest in infrastructure.
Everything is eye-watering expensive. So we can't afford teachers. We can't afford to replace their schools with the concrete roofs. We can't afford to pay the doctors what they want. We could just go on and on and on. Everything is regarded as eye-wateringly expensive. So what isn't? Or where have you got to look? I would love to be in government. I could go into government and sit and say, that crap, let's get rid of that. We're not interested in that either. What are we paying?
Go and stand and get elected and...
Well, I mean, all this nonsense. I mean, it's the whole political system because there are pressure groups. People say, oh, you've got to support us doing this and you've got to support us doing that. No, you don't. Let's pay for the important things. Let's pay for the things that are making a difference to people's lives. And I think what the Minister's talking about in terms of little railway museums and all that sort of thing and bridges, and it's all very nice. It is very nice.
No, it's fantastic. But actually, the words that were on my piece of paper were, and let me just find it quickly, the funding will protect a tourist rail line. And you think we're talking about HS2 here, and they're coming out to celebrate the protection of a tourist rail line.
And you know what? They all think you're stupid. They think you're stupid, and they think, oh, everybody will be palmed off for this, and say, oh, well, they are doing lots and lots and lots. Look, I'm just asking you, are they doing lots? Do you feel funded? Do you feel levelled up? Where is all this money going? Who is levelled up? I'm sure people in the south don't feel that they are ahead of the north either. They don't feel particularly wealthy. So where's all the money going? Down what drain is it going? Let us know this morning. We go to Scotland Yard now. Theo Chicumba there for us today about this firearms situation and police officers threatening to go on strike, and some, Theo, handing their weapons in.
Yes, that's right. Well, a very good morning to you, first of all. Now, Scotland Yard's Firearms Command is up against a crisis as more than 100 of their officers handed in their tickets, which essentially allow them to carry a firearm and do their duties. Now, the Home Secretary last night, she said she's launching a review into this situation and has spoken to the Metropolitan Police's Commissioner. Now, officers are protesting at what they say is a lack of support following their colleague who was charged with murdering an unarmed man last September named Chris Cabba. Now, of course, we've heard in the last couple of days about the support that is being offered to the Metropolitan Police, and of course they have reached out to other forces to see if they can come and help them. Some have refused, though, it's worth pointing out. Now, we understand the SAS, the Army, is coming in to support the firearms officers who are still working, but this is only in an emergency situation, so they won't be in and around the capital patrolling the streets. But it does make it difficult. What next? Because firearmed officers are important for the safety of those in the capital, but with concerns from firearmed officers, there is now some concern over safety in the capital. Some of those officers saying, if we end up in a situation like this, what will this mean for me and my family? And that's a concern that they have.
OK, Theo Chicumba with that. Thanks very much indeed.
The Home Secretary will call on Western leaders this week to come together to help combat the global migrant crisis.
Yes, Suella Braverman is to tell an audience in Washington that countries can learn from the innovative steps that the UK has tried to take in dealing with illegal migration.
Well, that's not what it said there. It said that the UK has taken.
Yeah, but they haven't been successful with the Bibi Stockholm or with the Rwanda flights yet. Yes, they may be innovative ideas, but unfortunately they aren't yet active policy.
Yeah.
Lots of
so I find it strange that we can go to America and say, this is how you should handle your migrant crisis, because are we doing it? Well, as she addresses her global audience, GB News has travelled to the front line of this crisis in Europe. Now, this morning, we are live to Mark White. Mark is in an Italian island, Lampedusa. Mark, the significance of Lampedusa, it all looks very beautiful, but the imbalance between migrants and people living there is absolutely incredible. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, this island has been in recent weeks overwhelmed by the number of migrants arriving from North Africa to this, one of the most southerly points in Europe. As we arrived into Lampedusa last night, we filmed as dozens of Italian police officers arrived at the airport there to help reinforce the officers who are already here. Of course, this island itself is a permanent population of about 6,000, so there would only be on at any given time around about half a dozen police officers normally, but there are hundreds of police officers here to deal with what is a growing crisis. And our reporter, Thomas Sullivan, has been looking at the background to this crisis.
Italy's most southern island, Lampedusa, has for the last 2 decades taken in thousands of asylum seekers who have overwhelmed the small island's processing facilities, often leading to riots as conditions become intolerable and overcrowded. The island is actually closer to Africa than it is to the rest of Italy and has long been a key transit point for migrants and refugees seeking to enter Europe. So why has this old problem been growing worse, and what are people fleeing from? After Colonel Gaddafi's removal following Western intervention in 2011, Libya descended into a brutal civil war that left the country vulnerable to terrorist gangs and left Europe's maritime borders more vulnerable to illegal crossings. Next month will be the 10-year anniversary of the tragic sinking of a migrant boat off Lampedusa, which saw 360 people lose their lives. But weak state control on the North African coast is only one part of the problem. Another part is the deteriorating humanitarian situation in West Africa. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, who was elected on an anti-migration ticket, has repeatedly claimed that the solution to Europe's migration crisis lies in improving the quality of life for those who are so desperate to flee.
The gold that this child goes down a tunnel to extract mostly ends up in the coffers of the French state. So the solution is not to take the Africans and bring them to Europe. The solution is to free Africa from certain Europeans who exploit it and allow these people to live of what they have.
Anger with France in the Sahel region is real, as a string of anti-Western coups in the past year has shown. And this destabilization has been exploited by Russia and its Wagner proxies. There has long been concern that Wagner is being used by Russia to support coups in return for favourable export deals when it comes to Africa's minerals and resources. And Russia, via their ally Belarus, has demonstrated that they're not adverse to using desperate people as a weapon of war. So as Europe grapples with a seemingly unending and unsolvable migrant crisis, should its politicians be listening to the likes of Meloni and others on the front line who say that the problem must also be solved at source?
Well, the people of Lampedusa have enjoyed somewhat of respite in recent days as the Mistral winds have been blowing and they've been making it a bit impassable out in the Mediterranean for these boats to make what is a 200-plus mile voyage here to Lampedusa. Now, last night we went down to an area of the harbour normally closed off, but we were able in the darkness to get right down to see some of the dozens of boats that are stored in this area of the harbour. We noticed, as they do here, just as the Border Force do with the boats that arrive from Dover, they paint on numbers for these boats. There was one boat, 975, so that particular boat, almost 1,000 have arrived this year so far, but that was just that boat. There may actually be many more than that. As I say, the Mistral winds have given some respite, but the islanders know that the second that the winds start to die down, the migrant boats will be back in numbers.
Mark, we'll be talking to you throughout the morning as to what happens when people arrive there and just a general update on the whole situation and how it affects all of us. And who lands in Lampedusa, their problem today, our problem tomorrow. So for the moment, my friend, thank you very much
Mark.
indeed.
And we are also in Dorset today talking about Bibi Stockholm. Remember that barge? There are suggestions it could reopen this week. We'll have all the latest on that. Apparently Legionella-free now, which is good news.
Well, I'd like to think so.
Allegedly. We'll see.
Go on there and have a dose of Legionnaire's disease while you're at it.
And we'll tell you all about it in Washington when we're at a conference.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. Today, it's been reported that NHS appointment cancellations are set to exceed a total of 1 million following joint strikes by junior doctors and consultants. The strikes reduced the NHS to a Christmas Day service, with the health service leaders calling the situation damaging and demoralising and warning there is a human cost.
In response to rising costs, Rishi Sunak is considering delaying the Birmingham to Manchester leg of HS2. The Prime Minister's been warned, however, that scrapping the second half of the HS2 rail line would be a gross act of vandalism.
26% rise in rough sleepers in the past year. Urgent actions needed to tackle homelessness. A Kerslake Commission report released today stated the government won't meet its target, with the cost of living crisis coupled with a shortage of affordable housing impacting the increase.
We've got another storm coming our way, haven't we? What's this one called?
This was to do with bars.
Oh, right.
Storm in bars.
Storm in a bar.
Bar workers will be told not to say things like, see him again? See him again? And we'll make that a double in an effort to curb binge drinking.
Oh, as if that's in their interest. They're running a bar. They want binge drinking.
Yeah.
What kind of nanny state suggestion is that?
Well, it is. It's updated guidance from the alcohol industry encourages pub staff not to use language that makes punters feel pressurised to drink.
What if they're drinking,
fruit juice.
a lime and soda?
Yeah.
Same again? Can't say that.
No.
It's ridiculous.
Well, you see, I would say that the industry should avoid words like that.
Barmen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
the
bar workers.
ladies, bartenders.
Yes, barmaids.
Also, there is a storm on the way. Can you remember the name of this one?
Agnes.
Agnes, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Craig Snell has the details.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, we will see some sunnier and brighter moments, but watch out for Wednesday. Could turn very windy for some of us. Back to the here and now. Lots of sunshine out there, actually, across parts of England and Wales. Still maybe a little bit of overnight rain and cloud just to clear the very far southeast. But for most of us, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the main bulk of the showers, and some of these could potentially be quite heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. And still quite windy here. That will temper the temperatures somewhat, but down towards the southeast, feeling quite warm, highs reaching 22 or 23 degrees. Into the evening, a lot of England and Wales remaining dry. Still the risk of some showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland, especially across more western areas. Elsewhere, under the clear skies, we could see some mist and fog also forming. And then later on in the night, just starting to potentially see some heavy showers working in across the very far south coast of England. A mild night for all of us, temperatures staying firmly in double figures. So these showers will then track their way northwards across parts of England as we go through the course of the morning. Elsewhere, once any early mist and fog clears, briefly drier and brighter, but then further bands of rain moving in from the west, which will be accompanied again by some fairly strong winds, heaviest of the rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But despite the wind, it's going to be another fairly mild one. Temperatures high teens in the north, low 20s in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for tuning in. Still to come on the programme this morning.
As the Crown Prosecution Service is to decide whether or not Lucy Letby should be back in court for a new trial, we'll be debating prejudice and whether that can influence the presumption of innocence. We'll explain that in more detail.
I hope someone explains that to me. Right, next.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
This nurse, Lucy Letby, this murderer, she's the most prolific child killer of modern times. She got a whole life order after being found guilty of killing 7 babies, attempting to kill 6 more. But it seems that there are some people who are just not remotely convinced she is guilty.
Well, Facebook groups have been set up in support of Lucy's appeal. She's appealing some of those cases that haven't yet gone to trial.
Letby's appeal.
And, yeah, Letby's appeal.
Yeah. People put Christian names in now for murders and things, and they should go by the surname.
Well, look, some of them are arguing she got away with her crimes because she was white and a woman. So we're asking, is she able to get a fair trial, really, or does all this information out there prevent that from happening? The Crown Prosecution Service, considering Letby's case, will decide today whether or not she will face a fresh trial.
Well, joining us this morning, anti-racism activist Eamonn and leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin. David, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about the verdict here and the veracity of the evidence that was given in the trial. And I think I've never seen a case like this where there's been so many questions about the verdict almost immediately. And this case is very similar to something that happened in the Netherlands, which was the case of Lucia de Burke, who was a nurse that was in prison for 7 years. And then she had an appeal, and the verdicts were overturned. She was originally found guilty, and then she was found innocent. And there's a lot of things about this case that are very concerning. I mean, well, it's still today, when you hear reports about this on some mainstream outlets, they say there were 7 deaths in a 12-month period. Lucy was there for all of those deaths of babies, but that simply isn't true. There were 17 deaths in that 12-month period. There were 9 of them where she wasn't even there, but that's not presented to us in the media, and that wasn't presented to the jury in the courts. They were presented with a spreadsheet that showed that she was there 100% of the time, when that simply wasn't true. So there's things like that which I think I'm questioning, a lot of people are questioning, and saying all of the evidence was circumstantial, absolutely all of it, and therefore the verdict is seemingly unsafe. This could be one of the biggest and greatest miscarriages of justice ever in England, and it needs to be re-looked at, and there needs to be a retrial.
I mean, you're questioning the verdict of the trial of which she was found guilty, and that had to be based on evidence that was presented in court, and the judge will have directed the jury, and it would have been a threshold for that to have reached a certain kind of level of proof. We're not actually debating whether or not her verdict was correct. We're debating whether or not the cases that didn't yet get heard should be tried. And I want to know whether or not, Eamonn, you think Lucy Letby will be able to have a fair trial, given she's been found guilty of all these many other cases?
I think it's incredibly hard due to the fact that prejudice is naturally involved. So what people fail to realise that, of course, it affects every aspect of our life, and it plays a vital role in our decision making, right? So how we perceive people, etc. The reason why every single person on the planet has prejudice is because of social categorizing, which is a natural cognitive process that puts everything and everyone into boxes in an attempt to simplify the world around us. And unfortunately, this leads to generalizations, stereotypes, and preconceived opinions about people, things and places, all of which are influenced by our environment, which includes the media, what we hear, see and read, etc. So in the case of Lucy, our environment tells us that white women who are young and university educated are not suspicious and murderers, and so therefore she wasn't perceived in that way. So it becomes quite difficult when we take into consideration prejudice, because it does affect how we perceive people. And I think that the verdict is already in, so I think people will naturally lead with their prejudice on this one.
Listen, I hear what you're saying. I'm just fascinated. So just give me this straight. You're saying if she was not white, it would be more likely that people would say, yeah, she's as guilty as heck.
It depends on many different types of prejudice, but racial prejudice is one, definitely. So obviously we're dealing with the issue of institutionalized racism and the disciplinary process. So there is a huge disparity, a disproportionality between black staff and white staff when it pertains to the disciplinary process. So for example, on average across the NHS, black people are 1.14 times more likely to be disciplined. So in other words, it would have been a lot harder if she were black to skate under the radar, right? So it's due to the fact that we have institutionalized racism.
David, from your point of view, do you think people have been blind looking at Lucy Letby and they just can't see her crime?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't think this has anything to do with prejudice in terms of her colour of her skin. I think people are just looking at the evidence and they're thinking, well, you know, is this true or not? And they're asking questions about this. But, you know, if we talk about prejudice, I think when it comes to the judicial system, most of the prejudice to me, in general, seems to be coming from the left of the political spectrum, people who pursue these narratives of critical race theory, that the country is institutionally racist and therefore white people get off more than black people. That simply isn't true, because when you're in a court of law and there's a jury of 12 people, they are presented with evidence, and the judge, to a very great extent, directs the evidence that they receive. And what is, you know, very, very good in England, or should work in our judicial system, is that there are press reporting restrictions. So people who are in the jury should not be prejudiced by seeing information about the case before the case, outside the case, or after the case. But the thing is, with this now, there's been so much reporting over the last 4 weeks. There's been really hatred has been whipped up against Lucy, I think very, very unjustly, because there are questions about the verdict. And it's questionable whether she will get a free trial, a fair trial now, because of what's been said in the media over the last 4 weeks.
OK, Eamonn and David?
Prejudice is everywhere. Let me just add that. Prejudice is everywhere. Secondly, you spoke about institutionalized racism. We already had the Met Police be proven to be institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic. And on top of that, jurors and judges are expected to ensure that their prejudice and bias does not affect their decision-making. Why? Because it leads to unfair discriminatory practices. So again, prejudice is everywhere. It is a part of the natural human dynamic. And so you have to make a conscious decision to ensure that the media doesn't actually affect your decision-making. You have to make a conscious decision to ensure that what you hear, see and read doesn't influence you in a negative way. So
got to leave it there, guys. Thank you. Thank you both very much indeed, Eamonn and David. Thank you.
Lots of people not that happy about that, saying, why are we making this a racist issue? I'm sick of hearing racism being used in all of these arguments. I have to say, it does seem sort of an interesting twist on all of that. Let us know your thoughts this morning. Meanwhile, here's the sport with Paul Coit to lighten the mood. It was a good night for Wales.
It was an amazing night for Wales. And equally, a terrible night for Australia and Eddie Jones.
Yeah.
Eddie Jones, of course, was England coach, and then he's now gone to Australia, which he actually coached before. And it was a disaster, absolute disaster for them. So Wales, though, were terrific. First team to reach the quarterfinals now of the World Cup. And then Australia could be the first Australian team in the World Cup to be eliminated.
Yeah, it was a big win, though, as well, wasn't it? It was a big defeat for Australia.
I mean, 46. And they were just terrific. And Warren Gatland, of course, let's talk about Wales for a while, because Wales were down and out. We look a year ago, there was disasters, there was problems with the actual federation as well. Everything was looking bad. Warren Gatland comes back in, has turned everything around, and they are looking very good. And also there's the worry that Australia had, although it's probably not a worry because they want to get rid of him. Eddie Jones may be going to Japan again. So he seems to leave somewhere, go off somewhere else, and then go back. So let's just hope he...
OK. Before we get into the football, the Solheim Cup.
Yeah, the Solheim Cup. I mean, this was terrific. We're looking forward to the Ryder Cup, which is this weekend. The Solheim Cup.
What? Ryder this weekend?
It's this weekend.
Gosh.
The Solheim Cup was just the weekend just gone. The women play Europe against the USA.
This weekend.
You better unplan them because we've got the Ryder Cup and the Solheim Cup, which Europe had won, for the last 3.
Yeah.
It was halved, so which meant that they retained the Solheim Cup, and it was a really
Cup this weekend. That's annoyed me now.
You can't take your mind off it.
He's officiating at the wedding, remember, this weekend. So you're going to have to get the Ryder Cup live streamed.
Can we not make a change? Can we not? Are you going to miss the singles? What day is this? Is this Saturday or Sunday? Because it's going Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's going to be
that's a whole other thing. Football.
I've got to mention Carlotta Siganda.
Who's who?
She hold a 2-footer to retain the actual Solheim Cup. She beat American Nelly Corda. She won all 4 games, so she's Spanish, playing in Spain to retain the trophy. It was amazing scenes, and the only good thing is that the head of the Spanish PGA didn't kiss her on the lips. So that was fine. Thank goodness that didn't happen, but she was amazing.
The King was there, King of Spain, watching it.
Absolutely.
Spain win everything.
Honestly, it was terrific. It was terrific.
Tell you what, people object to our royalty. I've watched a documentary on the royals.
Well, he's the new king, not the old king.
Yes, I know. But his daddy was a bad boy.
Wow.
Absolutely, that's worth watching.
Okay,
some Sky documentaries.
I'll have a look at that. That's what I haven't seen.
Good.
But I do know.
See you again in an hour, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Footy then coming up.
Oh, yeah, this is really interesting. Scientists have discovered that yoghurt can get rid of garlic breath. Do you like garlic?
I love garlic.
I love garlic too, so it sounds like we might need a yoghurt of a morning. All that and more in your headline makers round the bend.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What's making the headlines today? We will find out now from Christopher Biggins and Ella Whelan. Very nice to see you both. And Christopher, we're going to begin with you, Daily Telegraph, and you are highlighting the fact that Metropolitan Police armed officers, a lot of them have handed their guns in. What's going to happen next?
Well, I think it's a real problem. I mean, you know, this, of course, is the fact that a policeman murdered a member of the public.
Well, hang on.
Not murdered.
Yes,
No,
yeah,
shot.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
And it was all very unfortunate. But I can understand why the police are doing this, because I think, you know, if they're going to then be put in a position where they're going to have a problem with... I mean, I think, Ella, you said, which I thought was very interesting, what they should do is shoot someone in the foot if they're going to shoot someone.
Well, yes,
but they don't always have that choice. That's the thing. And I think if we have an armed police force, we have armed units, they all know that if they discharge that weapon, they're suspended from work. My point is, why would I want to do that job?
Exactly.
They have a shortage of people wanting to do that job, and then you start to question, well, you know, is this a deterrent? And, you know, therefore, are we safe if we don't have people wanting to do it?
What do you think?
Well, they're talking about bringing the army in, aren't they, to help in the situation, which I don't think is a help.
Well, there's limited scope to what we can say because it's obviously a live case. But there, I think the fact that charges have been brought, all of that seems perfectly reasonable. And we'll wait to see what the outcome of that is. But in relation, you know, there is this tension within the police, which is that there seems to be some bad things happening, whether it's this case or, you know, discussions about Wayne Couzens or questions around police conduct in other areas, which then, you know, paints a particular view of the police. There's debates on television programmes about the morality of the police. And there's a lot of pressure on police officers who are, you know, probably have a huge amount of workload given the broadening scope of police activity, whether it's, you know, policing online speech or all the rest of it, which then means that I think there's a bit of a crisis of a sense of public service within the police, which is why would you want to sacrifice, put yourself in harm's way, make the sacrifices you have to make in that role, if there's not the sort of level of public or even institutional support.
I just want to ask, Ella, what you make of the intervention from the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Obviously, this is someone who doesn't mind sailing close to the wind. She pushes the boundaries, but she is a former Attorney General, qualified, very intelligent lawyer, and arguably this letter that she's put out saying that, you know, police should be free to do their jobs. Could that not be used by the defence in this case?
Yeah, I think that it's probably an unwise intervention. You know, in order to be able to get proper justice for this case, no matter who you support in relation to it, there needs to be a level of restraint from politicians.
To have the debate, by all means, but surely after the case. Otherwise, you can't have a fair trial.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously, there is this individual case in relation to Cabba, which, you know, we can't comment on too extensively. There is a broader question about police being able to feel confident in their job, to be able to use the tools that they need. On the other hand, I tend to think there needs to be a bit of a review because there's... don't want to use the term trigger happy in relation to this, but there's in terms of all the use of police's powers, there seems to be a sort of do first, think later approach to it, whether it's in relation to this case or arresting people on Twitter for posting limericks or things like that.
Yeah.
So a question about the police, sure, just restrain yourself when it's a live case, I think.
And also the police are under particular strain, aren't they, at the moment? I mean, everything seems to be against them.
But you would be under strain, Biggins, if you were armed and you knew your job could rely on you using your firearm on Westminster Bridge, on London Bridge, whatever. And that's what the public expect people to do, except when they do, It immediately goes against the officer who's discharged the weapon. So let us know your views on that one, armed policing, and what you think of it.
Two fat ladies is offensive and should be scrapped as a bingo term. This is a story in the Sun today.
Oh dear, where is it going to end? I mean, you know, it's fun. It's a fun statement, and we've been doing it. I've been playing bingo for about 60 years, I think.
Are you any good?
And 88 looks like two fat ladies or men
exactly,
or whatever.
But, you know, to someone to say now, oh, this is offensive and it should be dropped, is ridiculous. Where are we going to go with this?
Well, to be fair, only 1 in 4 people thought it was offensive, so the vast majority seem to think it's fine.
Where do these figures come from? I don't know.
A poll by the Sun.
Yes.
This is what always happens. It's that I'm sure there hasn't been a campaign among bingo lovers to make this kind of revision. It always comes from the top down in a kind of knee-jerk.
What are
and
the
it'll
other
be people who don't play bingo.
Yeah, exactly.
What are the other bingo phrases? Come on, let's.
Legs 11.
Legs 11. Yeah, that's definitely the next
that wouldn't
one.
be allowed, yeah.
No, exactly.
Come on, bingo player over here.
What's number 1?
Don't say it because you'll probably get in trouble.
Number 1, that's what it'll be. All right, shall we talk about homelessness and the royal family? Prince William's, you know, big on trying to cut it down, but not when it comes to his brother, Ella, in the Express.
Poor old Harry, it's hard to get a booking last minute, but it seems that he's been turned down by Windsor. So there is obviously this kind of perennial issue of, I think, leaks within the royal family and particularly leaks to the press, and what seems to have been a sort of interaction between the administrative team in the royal residences and Harry has gone public, where he, expecting to be put up in one of the many rooms that the royals own and run.
But the many rooms have to be staffed. Someone's got to make the bed, someone's got to change the sheets, someone's got to be there to dance attendance to them and whatever.
Staff knocking about, haven't they?
No, I remember going to Buckingham Palace and Prince Andrew telling me about that he had a room there and he had to give notice when he would turn up. And you can actually just understand the practicalities of that. There's no point in just turning up on a Tuesday night and people going, we haven't got any staff to cover that or whatever.
Yeah, then, I mean, they're not a normal family, are they? So they can't just kip on the sofa. It doesn't really work like that. But I mean, I suppose the interesting point about this is how a family which is supposed to be representative of some kind of sublime image that is meant to be some, a sort of standard to live up to as they see themselves. That's the point of the royal family, in a way, is meant to be some kind of inspiration, is proving to be one of the most dysfunctional. I wonder what that says, and you can probably guess I'm not exactly a fan of the royals, what that says about conversation about the monarchy in the future.
Well, King Charles was in Balmoral, apparently, at the time. I mean, surely there must have been, he could have had Charles's bed.
Well, quite.
Look, he's got enough to pay for a hotel. I wouldn't be losing any sleep over it and worried about it. Yoghurt, Ella. Yoghurt and the Telegraph can get rid of garlic breath.
There is nothing worse than garlic breath.
I
love garlic, but smelling it on somebody else.
Oh, do you hate it? Oh,
do you not mind?
I don't mind it at all. I love garlic.
Does alcohol not smell worse?
No.
Or people who
there was that clip, there's this sort of infamous thing that's about Miriam Margolyes, who loves to bite into raw onions.
Quite smelly, isn't
she? Yeah, she carries a raw onion around like an apple, and she makes the point that onion breath, a bit like garlic breath, it's kind of explainable. It's not just like general bad breath. If your breath smells like onion or smells like garlic, it almost makes it not so bad because you can...
I'm not sure I agree with that.
But anyway, the story is that that if you do have garlic breath and maybe you're going on a date or, a bit worried about getting up close and personal with someone, eat some yoghurt, because there has been this scientific study that shows that whole milk plain yoghurt, the protein in it counteracts the sulfur-based compounds in garlic.
What if you have an Indian and you get a writer, which is and yoghurt?
I know.
Who wins?
Exactly, yeah. I don't know whether the cucumber does something to
alleviate
affect it as well.
I love garlic, and I don't mind smelling it on other people. Isn't that interesting? Yes.
Biggins,
yes,
Lib Dem conference is happening in Bournemouth. The Telegraph is reporting that they're there's a bit of a sing-song going on. Tell us more.
Yeah, I know, this is hysterical. They've rewritten the Three Lions anthem as a song about rejoining the EU. And the ditty is one of several parodies which will be sung at a karaoke night, marking the close of the party's annual conference in Bournemouth. It begins by referring to a referendum full of hate, followed by a chorus featuring the lyrics, "Gold stars on the flag, for freedom still gleaming, glory years of peace, kept us all campaigning." It sounds wonderful. I can't wait to join in.
Apparently, Carol Vorderman and Steve Coogan are among the celebrities who are signing up and endorsing the Lib Dems at their conference.
That's right.
The funny thing about these sort of things is that there's so much of the Remain campaign, or Remainer, the sort of post-Brexit campaign argument was that Brexit was this horrendous, petty, nationalist, sort of flag-obsessed thing. I've never met a group more obsessed with anthems and flags and sort of the kind of pomp of sort of quasi-nationalism as Remainers, so it's strange, isn't it?
So, but the Lib Dems are saying that it's not a priority to get back into Europe for them.
No, they're saying it's their longer-term objective. It absolutely is their
They can probably
long-term
tell
plan.
it's not massively popular at the moment as a policy announcement.
OK. Guys, thank you very much indeed. Ella and Christopher will be back in 40 minutes' time.
And here's Craig Snell with your weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, we will see some sunnier and brighter moments, but watch out for Wednesday. Could turn very windy for some of us. Back to the here and now. Lots of sunshine out there, actually, across parts of England and Wales. Still maybe a little bit of overnight rain and cloud just to clear the very far southeast. But for most of us, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the main bulk of the showers, and some of these could potentially be quite heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. And still quite windy here. That will temper the temperatures somewhat, but down towards the southeast, feeling quite warm, highs reaching 22 or 23 degrees. Into the evening, a lot of England and Wales remaining dry. Still the risk of some showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland, especially across more western areas. Elsewhere, under the clear skies, we could see some mist and fog also forming. And then later on in the night, just starting to potentially see some heavy showers working in across the very far south coast of England. A mild night for all of us, temperatures staying firmly in double figures. So these showers will then track their way northwards across parts of England as we go through the course of the morning. Elsewhere, once any early mist and fog clears, briefly drier and brighter, but then further bands of rain moving in from the west, which will be accompanied again by some fairly strong winds, heaviest of the rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But despite the wind, it's going to be another fairly mild one. Temperatures high teens in the north, low 20s in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Just gone 8 o'clock, Monday, 25th of September, and you're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The army's being called in as London's firearms officers are handing in their weapons in protest over a colleague being charged with murder. The Home Secretary says officers must not fear ending up in the dock for carrying out their duties, and the Housing Minister told us she's right to say so.
Cannot have these incredibly skillful professionals who are keeping people safe fearing that they might end up in the dock, and that's why she has announced the review that she has.
As the Crown Prosecution Service decides whether Lucy Letby will be back in court for a fresh trial, questions have been raised on some Facebook platforms about her conviction. We'll be debating, does prejudice influence the presumption of innocence?
The UK government's calling on Western leaders to work together to combat the migrant crisis. But what are the solutions? We are live for you this morning from Lampedusa in Italy, where Mark White will have the latest.
And Craig Schnell will have your latest weather picture.
Good morning. It was a rather mixed picture over the weekend. Will the weather stay unsettled this week? Find out in a little bit.
And as always, Paul Coit is here with the latest from the world of sport.
Isabel, I'm not sure whether you're wearing red for Wales or for Arsenal today. OK, it's for Wales. Well, Arsenal
Not that I'm Welsh, but, you know, married to a
Arsenal
Welshie.
managed to hold Spurs to a draw. Chelsea lose again. Newcastle score 8. And as I mentioned, Wales thrash Australia, and a good win for Scotland as well in the Rugby World Cup.
Good. And as always, you can have your say in anything that we are discussing. Please do keep them coming in. I've just lost whatever you've said so far this morning, but we'll get them back.
We've had loads of good facts. We've been asking for fun facts throughout the course of the morning. It's made us laugh. Keep them coming in thick and fast. GBNews at GBNews.com.
I don't understand this, right? What does this mean?
The Vulcan thing.
No.
Oh.
Did you know the tip of your thumb and the tip of your index finger measure your nose? What does that actually mean?
I don't know. That's rubbish, isn't it?
That's rubbish. Right, anyway.
Well, who knows? We don't know if these facts are true or not. We're not fact-checking them, but we like the fun facts.
Run the sting.
Now, our top story this hour, a review into armed policing has been launched by the Home Secretary as large numbers of firearms officers have handed in their weapons in protest, and military personnel could now be drafted in to provide cover in London.
Well, the protest is in reaction to a firearms officer being charged with murdering an unarmed man. His name is Chris Cabba. In London last year, the 24-year-old was driving an Audi car in a residential street in south-east London when he was shot in the head. His death sparked protests in the community, and his family have said they wouldn't rest until they got justice.
My cousin Chris was very much loved by us. His loss is with us every day. He had a bright future ahead of him. His first child was about to be born. That his life was cut short by a police officer is a tragedy. We will not rest until the people responsible for Chris's death are held fully accountable.
Well, our reporter Theo Jacumba is at Scotland Yard for us this morning. And Theo, big questions about the safety of the capital if firearms are putting down their weapons, firearms officers.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Many people thinking, what next? Considering the firearms command here at New Scotland Yard is crucial to the safety of those in the capital. But as we know, over 100 of them have handed in their tickets, which mean they won't be able to use their firearms. And that, of course, allows them to do so. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has launched a review into this situation, but hasn't gone into the specific details. Perhaps we'll find out more about those in the coming days. And she has indeed also spoken to the Met's Police Commissioner, Sir Chris Rowley, as well. Now, she says that firearms officers should be able to do their job, without fearing of ending up in the dock. Now, they are protesting what they say is a lack of support following their colleague who was charged with the murder of Chris Cabba last September. And of course, they say, if we end up in this situation, what would this mean for me and my family? Perhaps fears that they may find themselves in a difficult situation should they then use their firearms when at work. Now, last night, the Met Police Commissioner, he wrote an open letter to the Home Secretary, and he said that it was right that the force is held to the highest standards, but the current system as it stands was undermining his officers and suggesting that it needed more legal protections. And the Met also say in a statement that some officers were worried about how the Crown Prosecution Service decision to charge impact on them. And as I was saying just a moment ago, some of those officers have spoken and they say, well, what would this mean for us going into the future? Now, of course, the question is, what next? What will happen should the Home Secretary intervene? The opposition have already said this is a difficult ground for the Home Secretary to intervene, considering the case that's ongoing. But of course, at large, is the safety of Londoners. Already, we know that some officers are being bought from other forces. Some have refused, though. But there is, of course, the SAS, which has been confirmed that they'll be helping out officers. They won't be doing patrols across the city, but they'll be coming in as and when they are needed. We've previously seen them come in to help, perhaps when there were strikes, border force strikes, and of course during the COVID-19 pandemic. But of course, as we have pointed out, what does this mean for the safety of those in the capital?
Thank you, Theo. Leave it there. Thank you.
Well, earlier on in the programme, we spoke to the government about all of this. The Housing Minister, Rachel Maclean, joined us, and she said the Home Secretary's right to reassure police officers that they'll be protected for doing their jobs.
Important that we support our extremely brave firearms officers. They have to make split-second decisions to keep the public safe, and they have our full support in doing that. But it is, of course, also completely right that the Home Secretary continues to look very carefully at the legal framework that governs their operations, as she has always done. It's her job to do that, to make sure that that balance is always right, because we cannot have these incredibly skillful professionals who are keeping people safe fearing that they might end up in the dock. And that's why she has announced the review that she has.
At 10:30 this morning, a hearing's due to determine whether the child killer, Lucy Letby, will face a retrial.
Yeah, the Crown Prosecution Service will announce whether it will seek a fresh trial against the former nurse for those 6 counts during the last trial that the jury failed to reach a verdict on.
OK, let's now go to Manchester Crown Court, our Northwest reporter Sophie Reaper there for us this morning. What should we expect today from the hearing, Sophie?
Well, good morning to you both. As you say, we are expecting to hear later on from the Crown Prosecution Service on whether or not they intend to seek that retrial. So just to explain a little bit about what that means. So there's those 6 counts that were left hung. So although last month Lucy Letby was found guilty of 7 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder, there were originally 22 counts on the indictment. So although she was found guilty on 14 counts, she was found not guilty on 2 counts. That left those 6 counts there that were hung, meaning the jury, one way or another, they were unable to come to a verdict on that, either unanimously or under the majority direction. So now we're expecting to hear from CPS today on whether or not they are going to try and take those 6 counts that were hung to a retrial. So those 6 counts, of course, we know were relating to child H, child J, child K, child N and child Q. Of course, all the names redacted for anonymity reasons. And the reason it's 5 children and 6 counts is because 2 of the counts relate to child N, all of those counts being attempted murder charges that Lucy Letby allegedly carried out between June of 2015 and June of 2016 while she was working at the Countess of Chester Hospital's neonatal unit. So I'm sure those families who are the parents or wider family of those babies who were allegedly attacked will be hoping that this will go to a retrial, because one way or another they would like some answers to exactly what happened to their children while they were at the Countess of Chester Hospital.
The 7 murders that she was found guilty of, they will still stick, they will stand, they won't go away.
Well, as far as we know, that is the case. Of course, we heard last week or so ago that Lucy Letby and her defence team have now made an application to appeal. That is a separate issue for anyone wondering at home. And it's not a simple process. She is, instead of just being able to make an appeal, instead they have to make an application to appeal. That will then be reviewed by a judge, which, by the way, could take up to 5 months for that to be in front of a judge at the Court of Appeal. If that is then approved, we'll then go down the appeals process. If it's denied, then Lucy Letby does have the opportunity, her and her legal team, to seek that to go through an official hearing, which would then see the application for appeal viewed by around 2 or 3 judges. So this isn't an easy process. It's incredibly complex. And although last month it did seem that the case was winding down after a 10-month-long trial, it does seem that now it's going to keep rumbling on as we keep going down these various pathways.
Sophie, appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed.
Now we're turning our attention to the issue of illegal immigration, and the Italian island of Lampedusa, which has seen more than 11,000 migrants arriving from North Africa in the past 10 days, is now synonymous with the crisis that is gripping Europe. And the UK government is now calling on Western leaders to come together to try and solve the problem.
It is incredible to see what is happening on Lampedusa, which is an island most people will never have heard of. 11,000 people live there. They are now being swamped, absolutely that population swamped by migrants. Tom Sullivan, for us, looks at possible solutions.
Italy's most southern island, Lampedusa, has for the last 2 decades taken in thousands of asylum seekers who have overwhelmed the small island's processing facilities, often leading to riots as conditions become intolerable and overcrowded. The island is actually closer to Africa than it is to the rest of Italy, and has long been a key transit point for migrants and refugees seeking to enter Europe. So why has this old problem been growing worse, and what are people fleeing from? After Colonel Gaddafi's removal following Western intervention in 2011, Libya descended into a brutal civil war that left the country vulnerable to terrorist gangs and left Europe's maritime borders more vulnerable to illegal crossings. Next month will be the 10-year anniversary of the tragic sinking of a migrant boat off Lampedusa, which saw 360 people lose their lives. But weak state control on the North African coast is only one part of the problem. Another part is the deteriorating humanitarian situation in West Africa. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, who was elected on an anti-migration ticket, has repeatedly claimed that the solution to Europe's migration crisis lies in improving the quality of life for those who are so desperate to flee.
The gold that this child goes down a tunnel to extract mostly ends up in the coffers of the French state. So the solution is not to take the Africans and bring them to Europe. The solution is to free Africa from certain Europeans who exploit it and allow these people to live of what they have.
Anger with France in the Sahel region is real, as a string of anti-Western coups in the past year has shown. And this destabilization has been exploited by Russia and its Wagner proxies. There has long been concern that Wagner is being used by Russia to support coups in return for favorable export deals when it comes to Africa's minerals and resources. And Russia, via their ally Belarus, has demonstrated that they're not adverse to using desperate people as a weapon of war. So as Europe grapples with the seemingly unending and unsolvable migrant crisis, should its politicians be listening to the likes of Meloni and others on the front line who say that the problem must also be solved at source?
In the thick of all of this for us this morning, Home and Security Editor Mark White. Let's go to Mark now. And Mark, that's the whole background as to how to stop this, about the numbers that are arriving. What are you witnessing? What are you seeing? Are you finding it shocking?
Well, not so far, no, because I think the people here are enjoying a bit of a respite. We've got the Mistral winds blowing out in the Mediterranean, which have made the crossing largely impassable. So we have seen a reduction in the number of boats coming across in recent days. As we arrived in Lampedusa last night, we filmed at the airport, actually, as dozens of additional police reinforcements landed at that airport, collected their baggage to head into the town. This is an island, normal permanent population of about 6,000. There would only be, on any given day, about half a dozen police officers that police this island, but there are hundreds now because of the crisis that this island is facing. Some 11,000 migrants that have arrived in just over a week. Now, because thankfully the winds have been blowing, that's allowing the authorities here to get a bit of a grip on the situation and to start sending these migrants, 400 at a time, by ferries to the mainland. But we know, of course, once they get to the mainland within the European Union, then many will make their way north to the coast of northwestern France, with a view then to trying to get across the English Channel to the UK. I should say as well, last night, very late at night, we managed to get access to an area that normally is forbidden during the day, but that shows some dozens of the many hundreds of small boats that have come across the Mediterranean, that have made that 200+ mile voyage from North Africa, from Tunisia and from Libya, coming to Lampedusa itself, and they're tied up, and we've seen alongside the boats, and in the boats are these tyre inner tubes. That's a makeshift life jackets, completely unsuitable really should they encounter any issues, any problems at sea. We've got a number of rescue boats that are out there all of the time looking to respond if any of these boats get into trouble. We're approaching what will be the 10th anniversary of a very significant tragedy here, when more than 300 migrants drowned when their boat got into difficulty near Lampedusa. It is a very live problem that dwarfs the situation, it has to be said, in the English Channel, but is very connected to that situation in the English Channel as well, because many, as I say, of the people here will make their way north to France.
And you've been in both locations, of course, having witnessed all of that. No one better to judge. Really appreciate that, Mark. Thanks very much. We'll speak again later in the programme.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And picking up really on that link between the problem that we see starts in Italy, but of course becomes an issue here in the UK. The most recent policy put forward by the government is, of course, the Bibby Stockholm barge. And the Prime Minister argues that it saves taxpayers money by housing up to 500.
It also could give you
asylum seekers.
Legionnaire's disease, it has to be said,
could
which
have
is
done,
why
yeah.
it's been out of action for a few weeks. Set to reopen this week. It's got the all clear, but that ignites frustration and anger in the town of Portland itself. Here's more from our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody.
Another cruise ship docks in Portland, its passengers spilling out onto the streets to buy souvenirs.
And this is what greets them when they arrive. A town that's on its feet and marching. A town that's divided. A town that's angry.
Two rival protest groups, united in wanting the barge gone, divided in every other way possible. And they're turning on each other. Dr. Susan Phoenix is from No to the Barge.
People were there doing their best for their community, they thought, and suddenly they would get something really horrid written onto the Facebook account that had no relation to anything or anybody. But of course, it's a good way of shutting down arguments. So, oh, you're a racist, oh, you're a Nazi, oh, you're this, that, and the other. And people go, oh, am I? And so they take a while to realise, no, they're not. So that local people are bullying each other. And they don't even realise they're doing it, you know, which is very sad.
Alex Bailey headed up the No to the Barge campaign. He's taken a step back because he says the online abuse has become unbearable.
Deeply upsetting. It has affected me personally, emotionally. To be called things that, quite frankly, it's awful.
Teresa Churchill fears for her community.
The division is growing deeper by the week. We're seeing different protesting groups coming into town, people being bussed in, then they disappear, go home away from Portland, and leave the community even deeper divided.
And that division is playing out on social media.
Cloning of people's Facebook accounts, malicious emails and texts. I want to say I'm shocked. And I don't think there's another word for it, Jeff. I am shocked because why are people behaving like this in a civilized society?
We're not built for it. We're not built for the constant harassment, the constant attacks on social media.
GB News has repeatedly asked the Stand Up to Racism campaign for comment. They have so far refused. Off camera, they tell me I'm giving voice to racists. I'm only presenting one side of the story. But they won't tell me their side. The divisions, the bitterness, have been festering here for months. And not a single migrant lives on the barge. The Bibby Stockholm, at the centre of so much fear and hate, remains empty. But that could change any day now. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well, there we go. Ongoing issues. Let us know your thoughts on all of those topics. And lots of you are getting in touch this morning about kind of useless facts that you store in your back pocket. Because yesterday we were having Sunday lunch, weren't we? And out of nowhere, out you come and my son with totally random facts, which kind of put my jaw on the floor, really. So people have been adding in their useful tuppence worth. And this is from Eileen. She says, did you know that the Eiffel Tower gets taller by 15 centimetres in the summer?
Well, I presume the heat makes it expand.
Yeah, it makes sense, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
When the moon is overhead, says Emily, you'll weigh less.
Oh, when does that happen? That would be a good one.
And this one, Eamonn and Isabel, here's a mind-blowing fact for you. Did you know that a leech has 10 stomachs, 9 pairs of testicles and several hundred teeth? And that's according to Jay.
Well, I've got the 10 stomach bits. I'm not sure about the rest of it, but oh my goodness me. We're also talking about shoplifting and how this epidemic, you can condemn this, you say this is awful, that's fine, absolutely no problem with that. or you can sit and say, why is this happening? And we're looking at this league table, which is being published as to the shoplifting capitals of the country. And miles ahead of everybody is Leeds.
Really? What's the percent?
Well, over 10 years, 17,216 reported cases of shoplifting. And next up is Cardiff, which is 5,000 behind
Gosh.
that. Yeah. And then, you know, so Manchester on 10,000, Birmingham on 11,000, Westminster. I thought Westminster was quite a
London's
posh,
funny, isn't it? You've got cheap by jowl, some of the most expensive areas. With
but
some of the most
why are
deprived.
people doing this? This is what we're trying to work out. Is it need? Is it necessity? Is it just because they're all tea leaves and they can get away with it?
Well, the line today was about charity shops suffering, was it 15 million in losses in the last year? You know, there is an
just
argument
go to a
that
charity shop to steal.
But also, I suppose, you know, charity shops are there to raise revenue to give money to charity. Perhaps, you know, of all the places to steal from, this is the most
It's a bad one.
forgiving.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it helps those in need.
Maybe.
Let us know your thoughts this morning.
We had footage earlier, and we'll show this again. We were talking to an expert about this, and basically there are people who just come in and they clear the grocery shelves in Sainsbury's and Tesco, in the Co-op, and they can sell a weekly grocery shop in the pub or on the street corner or whatever.
Don't get prosecuted because the police won't do anything about it.
Yeah, it has to be at least 200 quid before they take it seriously at all in any way. Right, let's take the weather seriously because it's going to get bumpy as the week goes on. Here's Craig.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, we will see some sunnier and brighter moments, but watch out for Wednesday. Could turn very windy for some of us. Back to the here and now. Lots of sunshine out there, actually, across parts of England and Wales. Still maybe a little bit of overnight rain and cloud just to clear the very far southeast. But for most of us, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the main bulk of the showers, and some of these could potentially be quite heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. And still quite windy here. That will temper the temperatures somewhat, but down towards the southeast, feeling quite warm, highs reaching 22 or 23 degrees. Into the evening, a lot of England and Wales remaining dry. Still the risk of some showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland, especially across more western areas. Elsewhere, under the clear skies, we could see some mist and fog also forming. And then later on in the night, just starting to potentially see some heavy showers working in across the very far south coast of England. A mild night for all of us, temperatures staying firmly in double figures. So these showers will then track their way northwards across parts of England as we go through the course of the morning. Elsewhere, once any early mist and fog clears, briefly drier and brighter, but then further bands of rain moving in from the west, which will be accompanied again by some fairly strong winds, heaviest of the rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But despite the wind, it's going to be another fairly mild one. Temperatures high teens in the north, low 20s in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Heavy concentration on this migrant question this morning. After the break, we're asking, should more be done to help migrants, or
should the focus be on protecting our borders? That's our debate next.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
OK, now, with the highly controversial Rwanda deportation plan being appealed at the Supreme Court next month, the government's migration policy is more contentious, perhaps, some could say, than ever before.
Well, right now on the programme, we're asking if the Home Office is doing enough for asylum seekers, or should the focus be protecting our own borders and keeping people out.
Well, we're joined now by Director of Sanctuary Foundation, Dr. Krish Kandaya. Welcome to you. And Security Strategy Specialist and President of the Primrose League, Henry Bolton. Good morning to you as well, Henry. Let's start with you then, Dr. Krish Kandaya. We're spending £8 million a day on hotels, but you think we ought to do more for migrants?
Well, I don't think we should be spending £8 million a day on hotels. That's money that should be in our foreign aid budget. But the issue there is that we don't have a functioning asylum system. So there's a huge backlog of people that haven't been processed. And on top of that, we don't let asylum seekers work. A lot of the asylum seekers I know would love to work, would love to contribute to the economy. And they don't really have any other choice at the moment except to sit in hotels and wait for their asylum process to be fulfilled. So the issue is a broken system. I don't think it's a choice of should we help more asylum seekers or should we have more secure borders. I actually think we need more secure borders. I'm a foster parent, and what we do at home is that we lock the door at night. We have a protection responsibility as parents to make sure that just not anybody walks in. But my front door is not permanently closed. If we get a call from social services, we open up our door and welcome people in. I think that's a metaphor for the way that our country can operate.
Is that a message, Henry, that you would take on board, that you would accept that the system is broken, but it should be more flexible than it is?
Actually, yes. I mean, but going back to the original question, are we doing enough? I mean, in terms of the resources and the effort that we're putting in, we're doing a huge amount, 8 million a day put into this problem. Lord knows how much manpower and so on. I mean, we are doing enough. What we're not doing is doing that in the right way, in a properly organised way, in an effective way. We're not securing our borders properly. We are not looking after the refugees who really need looking after properly. And we are failing in terms of the British public by allowing our economy and our society and our stable sort of nation here to be exploited by other people who have no intention whatsoever of integrating, but simply of feeding off it. So we have got to build a system that is efficient, that is practical, that is cost effective, and it's simply failing everybody at the moment due to lack of leadership and lack of planning by the government.
Failing everybody. Where would you start, though? I mean, do you think the argument that was put forward by Dr. Kandaya there about allowing asylum seekers to work while they wait for their case to be heard is a good one? Or do you think actually that would encourage people, it would be a pull factor?
It would be a pull factor. Look, the reality is, and I think everybody knows this, if they really are honest with themselves, the vast majority of people who cross the Channel, for example, are economic migrants. What we have allowed to happen is abuse of a well-meaning asylum system internationally so that economic migrants can now exploit it. We should not be enabling that to deepen further. You know, a principle, and it is not a matter of law, but it is just simply a principle of best practice that refugees, real refugees, should seek asylum in the first safe country. Now, you'll have heard a lot about that, but there is a reason for it. The reason is to prevent the exploitation of the system internationally by economic migrants.
Well,
by opening the door to them, we are failing the entire international network of refugees.
OK, and in that international network of refugees, Chris...
refugees like to return...
Yeah, Henry, I just want to talk to Chris about the specific type of refugee that he engages with, and that's Ukrainian refugees. So is the philosophy that Henry's talking about, does that apply well to Ukrainian refugees? Are we any better disposed towards Ukrainian refugees than we are from, say, African refugees?
We as a country have done an amazing job welcoming Ukrainian refugees. And interestingly, they haven't sought sanctuary in the first available country. They've come a long way to the United Kingdom, and we celebrate our incredible hospitality. Around 185,000 Ukrainians have come here and have integrated brilliantly. I was at an event on Saturday, 300 Ukrainians throwing a party for their hosts and their neighbours, wanting to say thank you. They're all working hard. I think there is a disparity. We've rolled out the red carpet, quite rightly, for our friends from Ukraine, but we're unwilling to do the same for other needy people. I dispute the fact that most migrants are coming because of economic reasons. Some are. I'm a huge fan of the country of Albania. That's the main group where people are coming because of economics. And actually there is generational poverty in that country. We've got some projects there to try and help people build a life in Albania so they don't make the journey here. But actually it's push factors that are the main reason that people are coming. It's people fleeing war and terror in places like Afghanistan, which I know my colleague here has spent a long time in, and he knows some of the challenges that people are facing there.
Guys, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. The question was, is the UK doing enough for migrants? Your views, very, very welcome. In the meantime, Dr. Krish Kandaya, thank you. And Henry Bolton, really appreciate your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Busy programme and a busy weekend of sport, and Paul Coit is here to take us through it all.
So much to squeeze in,
including a car crash.
Oh yeah, Marcus Rashford. Do you want to do that first?
Yes, let's do that first.
So Marcus Rashford then this is after he was leaving the Carrington training ground, has written off his 700 grand Rolls Royce, which, by the way, is probably nothing really as far as cash is concerned. It's 2.5 tonnes, top speed 155 miles an hour. He was OK. The lady who hit is also OK, just a little shaken, but everything seems fine. And I didn't actually have a picture of the car, but I think the closest thing I've got to a picture of the car, I think we will have that. I don't know whether we've got it. Have we got the picture of the Rolls Royce? I don't think so. But this is a huge.
Are you sure it might be a slightly different colour, the Rolls Royce? Is there any?
Maybe, I don't.
Yes. Oh,
it's.
there you are.
That's the closest I've got. That's the closest I've got. It's just a huge. There we are. Lady Penelope's, but
what a car.
That's pretty much like it.
What a car. Do you know I saw that in real life?
What do you mean in real life?
They brought it to Belfast.
Well,
And when I was a kid, when I was about 6 or 7, they had it in Ann Street in Belfast, and we all flocked around it. Just absolutely amazing.
I think I'd look good in one of you
I think you would. Parker,
you would be a good
Parker driving.
I'd be driving. Yes, my lady.
Yes, me lady.
Yes, my lady.
Yes, me lady.
Parker, please bring me to the...
Unbelievable. You
Bring
do
me to
both of the
GBNews.
voices. Absolutely. Arsenal 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2, a pulsating North London derby.
You didn't enjoy it, did you?
I know. Are you happy with that result?
I'm happy with the result. Yeah. I didn't enjoy it because it's just you sit there so uncomfortably, but it was a fantastic game, and Arsenal went ahead twice. But Spurs, and you found Spurs under Ange Postecoglou. A lot of people that thought Arsenal were going to win it easily, but it certainly wasn't the case.
And hitting the ball in the back of the net for Spurs is Mr. Son.
Heung-min Son, captain fantastic. Got 3 the other week, got 2 as well yesterday, and he really is a terrific player and a fantastic captain as well. Newcastle scored 8. Should mention Newcastle scored 8. Chelsea lost again to Aston Villa at home as well.
Yeah.
I'm itching to mention the Rugby World Cup. Obviously a big weekend. Yep. And Wales, what a night. I mean, either Australia's having a shocker or Wales is coming good.
You know what? I think it's a bit of both, to be honest with you. Australia are just awful at the moment under Eddie Jones. It's heartbreaking, isn't it, to see? It's really heartbreaking to see Australia doing so badly. Well, Wales are the first team to reach the quarter-finals now of the World Cup. Australia look unlikely to make it. What's going to happen to Eddie Jones after that, I don't know, because everybody's complaining about him. Scotland beat Tonga 45-17, so they're looking good as well, but they're going to have to beat Ireland if they're going to get any way. But also want to mention the women's marathon as well in Berlin yesterday. The world's women marathon record was broken. Tigist Asifa from Ethiopia, 2 hours, 11 minutes, 53 seconds.
Crikey.
And Charlotte Purdue, I should mention, there we are, there's Tigist coming through. Charlotte Purdue, who's our best runner, she ran the second fastest marathon for Britain behind Paula Radcliffe. She finished 10 minutes behind and over 2 miles behind Tigist Asifa, who won it, but she's wearing those super shoes. You know, they talk about the super shoes? These Adidas super shoes. 400 quid a pair, by the way, they are. But you could, who knows how fast you could go in a pair of those.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. That is the
I went
question.
even faster than Tigist, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. You were super fast.
That was a new world record.
Yeah, it was. Well done.
OK. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News, on radio, online, on TV, Britain's news channel. Coming up.
A celebrity chef has taken sheep for a walk over a busy London bridge. It's all in the name of tradition. That and more after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Now in the company of Christopher Biggins and Ella Whelan for the third time this morning. So, Ella, what have you come up with this time? This is in the Times.
Yes, well, so the ramifications of the Russell Brand saga rumble on, and with the announcement that the online safety bill has passed and is going to become law, there is this question around Rumble, the video sharing platform, which has refused to remove Brand's content, despite it being essentially lent on by Caroline Dinenage, and pressurised by lots of commentators and other people to remove it, much like YouTube has demonetised him. But the question is, with the online safety bill and the sort of requirements it has for platforms, such as removing illegal content, but within that term illegal, there's a huge scope of the kind of stuff, ranging from, very severe things like child pornography, terrorism, violence, to hateful content, whatever that means. And the question is whether or not enough pressure will be put on Rumble and other platforms for them to basically say it's an American company. OK, with the online safety bill, it's just too difficult to operate in this country, and we'll take ourselves off. And so basically, the Times is using that to suggest that maybe this one place that Russell Brand still has a platform, a kind of free and open platform, could be removed. And I suppose it's a question of whether or not you believe there should be free speech online. There's just this fascinating quote from Lord Allen of Hallam, who's former executive in Facebook, in the Times here, saying, describing Rumble's approach to free speech, they have a pretty robust one. He says, you don't just get a free pass. Their whole philosophy is freedom of expression, a kind of screw you. He's just so kind of
dismissive. But this is the home to Andrew Tate, the world's leading misogynist, and Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist. So, it's not exactly kind of like glossy lineup of lovable characters.
No, it's pretty awful people, but that's what happens when you give freedom of speech. It's to your foes as well as your friends.
Let's talk about net zero and the targets. This is in the Eye, Christopher. So a green target delay will actually raise the cost of living, the Prime Minister's been told.
Absolutely. More than 100 economists warn Rishi Sunak that the climate policy U-turn will raise living expenses and put Britain behind other countries in the race to build a green economy. Now, if this is true, what these economists say, and of course they are, the economists are very clever at what they know, it is quite something, quite a statement to make.
Yeah, at the same time, Trump coming out and saying, I always knew Sunak was smart, that he wasn't going to destroy and bankrupt his nation for fake climate alarmists that don't have a clue. So you've got the economists on one side...
And Trump on the other.
And John Caldwell, the biggest Tory party donor at the last election, phones for you, saying that he's considering voting Labour after the rowback on green policies by Rishi Sunak last week.
These experts are being about as speculative as Trump is, because if you actually look at the detail of what they're saying, it's that there were these plans under Net Zero. The whole idea is that it would create jobs through a kind of new green industry, which, you know, you can pick holes in almost immediately because there is not enough investment going into that. So they're sort of theorising is that with a delay on that, it will cost jobs. These are jobs that haven't actually been necessarily created already.
Is it just about jobs, or is it all about the cost of not having our own energy, for example, and renewables, and being dependent on the likes of Russia or whatever else it might be?
Which is a problem under Net Zero as well. I mean, the idea that, you know, that at the moment we're such kind of small-timers thinking that the options are either sort of rely on fossil fuels forever and do nothing, or everybody suddenly be reliable on the couple of wind farms we have. I mean, obviously there has to be a different way of doing this.
Misery of musicians blocked from taking instruments on flights begins. This is in the Times.
I know, this is a very sad story and not good for British Airways, who are coming under increasing pressure with whatever they do nowadays. But this wonderful cellist took his cello on the flight, paid for a seat for the cello, because, you know, they're saying it should have gone in the hole. Well, you can't put an instrument...
I'm laughing out loud as to what would happen to that.
Absolutely. In bits you'd get it, wouldn't you, at the end of the...
In bits?
Yeah.
So the cellist, he treats this as if it's his baby, as if it's like a human to him.
Exactly.
It is his...
it's probably worth a fortune.
Yeah, of course. And it can only be tuned in a certain way. He's totally used to it. It's like snooker players taking their snooker cues, or tennis players taking their rackets.
Having paid for an extra ticket, and then to be told, no, he can't bring it on, and then...
Here's what I don't understand. Why, if he's paid for it, why doesn't that cello have the same rights or validity as any other passenger? Why can the cello be biffed if its seat has been paid for?
But I think it was a British Airways employee. He was ridiculously holding to some rule.
Do we know what airport it was in?
Yes, it was coming from Germany, I think.
But it wasn't in England, for instance.
No, it wasn't. But it was coming to England, I think. But it is terrible. I mean, hang on. On their August tour of South America, where he was performing, no, it was from South America.
There we go.
He paid double to take his instrument with him, but was refused boarding until his pleading finally won out. But it is terrible, you know, that they have these rules and they don't look to thinking about how to help this person. You know, they don't want to help anybody. I remember a friend of mine was travelling first class to Los Angeles, and she said to the girl, "Would you mind putting my coat in the wardrobe?" She said, "No, I'm very busy, dear. Do it yourself."
For first class.
First class. You know, how you paid all that money?
Oh dear, dear.
Ella, let's talk about motherhood. You've got a little one, haven't you? A small baby. The Telegraph reporting today that a new discovery has been found in relation to mothers and cells from their babies, which is fascinating.
I actually picked this out because you're in a sort of fact mood this morning on the show, and I think this is incredible. So I mean, they've been talking about the idea that, or the fact that cells transfer between mother and baby throughout a pregnancy, but there's new research to show that not only do cells travel from the baby to the mother and then after birth, they stay within the mother, but they also can help a woman's body to almost remember the pregnancy and then make it more successful or easier to have pregnancies afterwards with the same father, if it's the same sort of genetic makeup. And so the reason why this is really important is that, number one, if you have had IVF like I had, there's potentially an increase. Actually, it says 1 in 5 women became pregnant naturally after having a baby through IVF, because it sort of was almost like muscle. This is going to sound very unscientific, but muscle memory. And the most wonderful thing about this research is that if women are suffering from multiple miscarriages or if there are complications, knowing more about this sort of, they call it a crosstalk of cells, knowing more about the way in which the cells transfer between pregnancy and the mother's body can help to sort of, you know, have more information, but also prevent miscarriages and things like that. So it's wonderful news for fertility.
Fantastic. Wow, I love those sorts of stories. Still can't get over the fact if you're breastfeeding a baby and your baby is sick, then your body takes in some of the cells or the virus of the baby, works out what antibodies it needs and then gives it in your milk. Well, I mean, again, I'm no scientist, but the stuff around mothers and babies is incredible.
Nature is wonderful.
Yeah.
I wonder, is 2020 wonderful? A week ago, we were sitting on this programme discussing about the implementation of 20-mile-an-hour zones throughout Wales. It's all gone very quiet there. Has it been a good week? Has it worked out well? Is it not? Is it a nonsense? Let us know this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com. Let us know that.
Biggins, you want to talk about sheep?
Yes, this is the three-time Great British Menu winner, Richard Corrigan, walked over Southwark Bridge.
Who I know well, who's an Irish chef.
Yes, he's excellent. And he walked over Southwark Bridge with 9 sheep as part of the London Sheep Drive fundraising event. Now, it's interesting because I'm a freeman of the City of London and I can take my sheep over Tower Bridge.
Can you?
Yeah, anytime I want.
How many sheep do you have?
Well, I don't have any at the moment, but I could get a couple.
If you wanted to, you could.
And I think before I leave this world, I'd like to do it.
But somebody from British Airways would stop you.
Will you invite us along to witness this spectacle? I'd give good money to see
it'd be really good fun.
Which bridge would you choose?
Well, I think it's Tower Bridge if you're a freeman of the City of London.
How do you become a freeman of the City of London?
Well, I helped Roger Cork, who was Lord Mayor of London, raise £1 million about 25 years ago for cancer research. And he gave it to me as a sort of thank you for what we did that year.
Good.
So it was very nice. And I'm very honoured. And you get a plaque. And that's all you get.
Is it all livestock or is it just sheep or whatever kind of privileges?
No, I think it's sheep.
Just sheep.
I think it's down to sheep. I don't think you can take cows across. I suppose you could. Mr. Haas.
How many sheep do you have, Ella?
None. But if I was a freeman, a free woman,
I'd like to know
about getting a flock and keeping them somewhere in Hampshire just for the
what the London Sheep Drive is. What the London Sheep Drive is. Let's talk about shoplifting just as we finish here. For some reason, it's rampant in Leeds. Way ahead of anywhere else. Cardiff comes up next, but Leeds and...
that wonderful shopping centre in Leeds, too, apparently, is having a terrible time. There's a wonderful arcade in Leeds, which is beautiful, and there's a lot of...
Porn exchange, or am I making that up?
No, I think you're right. I think it is something like that. But I don't know. It now seems the privilege of everyone to shoplift.
And the privilege or the desperation? I mean, that's the question this morning. We've been asking people to get in touch with their stories, lots of them to share with you, and we will do that later on in the programme. But for now, we're going to take a little look about what the weather's going to get up to this week with Craig Snell at the Met Office, and I think it's going to be a bit of a stormy week.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, we will see some sunnier and brighter moments, but watch out for Wednesday. Could turn very windy for some of us. Back to the here and now. Lots of sunshine out there, actually, across parts of England and Wales. Still maybe a little bit of overnight rain and cloud just to clear the very far southeast. But for most of us, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the main bulk of the showers, and some of these could potentially be quite heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. And still quite windy here. That will temper the temperatures somewhat, but down towards the southeast, feeling quite warm, highs reaching 22 or 23 degrees. Into the evening, a lot of England and Wales remaining dry. Still the risk of some showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland, especially across more western areas. Elsewhere, under the clear skies, we could see some mist and fog also forming. And then later on in the night, just starting to potentially see some heavy showers working in across the very far south coast of England. A mild night for all of us, temperatures staying firmly in double figures. So these showers will then track their way northwards across parts of England as we go through the course of the morning. Elsewhere, once any early mist and fog clears, briefly drier and brighter, but then further bands of rain moving in from the west, which will be accompanied again by some fairly strong winds, heaviest of the rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But despite the wind, it's going to be another fairly mild one. Temperatures high teens in the north, low 20s in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
This shoplifting situation, Diane has been in touch to say a huge factor in shoplifting is shoplifting to order, and the reason it's there, it's to feed addicts. Drugs are a huge problem in the UK, and it's not discussed.
Betty says shoplifters steal because they can. She says it has nothing to do with the cost of living.
But here's an awful thing, Lavinia. She says, I'm now in my 60s, but when I was 12, I stole a pair of shoes. I was arrested and I was locked up for 4 years.
Good grief.
Seems somewhat excessive, doesn't it?
Whereas Miller says a friend of mine took a security job, didn't last a month.
Back after this.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, thank you for your company. It's just turned 9 o'clock on this Monday, the 25th of September. You are tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thank you for your company. These are the stories we have been covering this morning. The Army is called in as London's firearm officers hand in their weapons. It's in protest over a colleague being charged with murder. The PM has said officers need clarity over the matter. The government says officers must not fear ending up in the dock for carrying out their duties. The Housing Minister this morning told us this.
Cannot have these incredibly skillful professionals who are keeping people safe fearing that they might end up in the dock, and that's why she has announced the review that she has.
The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is to tell an audience in the US that Western leaders need to work together to combat the global migrant crisis.
Shoplifters have stolen over £15 million from charity shops alone in the past year. That's an 80% rise.
As the Crown Prosecution Service decide whether Lucy Letby will be back in court for a fresh trial, questions are being raised over her conviction.
And coming up, we're going to be joined by Richard Ratcliffe. Richard Ratcliffe is the husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, who was detained in Iran, accused of spying. We're going to hear how they've been supporting other people fleeing persecution and violence.
And we'll have a full forecast from Craig Snell.
Good morning. It was a rather mixed picture over the weekend. Will the weather stay unsettled this week? Find out in a little bit.
Join in our discussions. We've been very good doing that this morning. GBviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GBnews.
Well, a review into armed policing's been launched by the Home Secretary as large numbers of firearms officers have handed in their weapons in protest. Military personnel could now be drafted in to provide cover in London.
So this protest is in reaction to a firearms officer being charged with murdering an unarmed man, Chris Cabba, in London last year. Chris Cabba was driving an Audi car in a residential street in southeast London when he was shot in the head. His death sparked protests in the community, with his family saying they wouldn't rest until they got justice.
Well, our reporter Theo Jacumba is at Scotland Yard for us this morning. And Theo, in the last few minutes, the Prime Minister has waded into this row, saying that firearms officers need clarity on their legal rights around all of this, and he's backed his Home Secretary in this review.
That's right. Well, it is something that the Home Secretary has said is looking into as part of this review, following dozens of Met police officers who carry out firearm duties, handing in their tickets which allow them to carry out their duties. Now, of course, the Met Office officers are important in the city when it comes to security. Just this morning, you do see them going around this area, and of course, they pose as a deterrent. But if a situation does arise, they are there. Now, of course, we've heard some of the support that is being offered by other forces across the country. Some have refused, though, considering the case that's ongoing and the concerns that some officers have. Will they end up in the dock if they carry out these duties? Now, of course, what we have also heard is from the Met Commissioner as well, Sir Mark Rowley. He said this in an open letter, that it was right that his force is held to the highest standards, but the current system was undermining his officers and suggesting that they need more legal protections. And this is what the Housing Minister had to say earlier this morning.
Oh, she did say something, but we hadn't got it. Theo, we thank you. We say goodbye to you, Theo. We go to Jonathan Ashworth now, the Shadow Paymaster General, Labour Party spokesperson on all of this. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
We want to start, obviously, with this firearms officer situation. The Prime Minister coming out just in the last half hour saying that officers need clarity as to where they stand. The Army's now been called in. So many of these firearms officers are saying, you know, we don't know what's expected of us. We're putting our guns down. What's your take on things?
Well, firearms policing is a really important part of our policing service. It's vital that they have support, but there are also safeguards in place. Now, there's been a review announced by the Home Secretary. We don't know the details of that review yet. There's also that live prosecution, that court case. So I want as a politician to be careful about how I comment on these matters, as you would appreciate. But we obviously need to make sure we have procedures in place which commands the confidence of both the police officers and the communities they serve.
OK, fair enough. And with those thoughts in mind, we move on to another big issue that's being sort of speculated on in the press today, and that is HS2, whether or not this second leg, the northern link between Birmingham and Manchester, should be scrapped. Grant Shapps giving the biggest hint yesterday that it might be, saying that money is not infinite. All the polls suggest you guys and Labour are going to be in charge of our purse strings from next year. Would Labour commit to extending HS2?
I mean, look, it's an absolute shambles, isn't it? An absolute shambles. And we're in this state because of 13 years of incompetent, hopeless Tory ministers who've not got a grip of this infrastructure project. And I know I always say nothing works in this country. It looks like now they can't build anything either. Look, I think we need clarity urgently, because this is about business confidence. It's about communities across the North and the Midlands who are asking questions as to where they stand now. We get all these briefings and counter briefings in the newspapers. It's a complete mess. We need to know what the financial situation is. We've always supported HS2 because we think it's an important infrastructure project. We think it adds capacity to the network. That's good for passengers, it's good for freight, and it also adds connectivity across the North. But we need to know what the financial situation is.
Yeah, but do you have
and
a
the government really need to clear this up.
Yeah, but I mean, how much would you spend? Are you prepared to pay whatever it takes, or would you say once you don't have to see the books as they stand to be able to say, well, we have a limit to how much we'll spend? Obviously, the government are thinking they're almost at theirs. What would your limit be?
Well, we would assess the situation when we actually know what the exact figures are. Look, 12 months ago, we had a Conservative, But just let me say this, 12 months ago we had a Conservative government being utterly cavalier and irresponsible with the public finances. That's why your viewers are paying more on their mortgages now, £220 more a month on average. It's why we've got the inflation problems, because of that irresponsible approach to the public finances. So I'm making the point. We will not be irresponsible with the public finances. We will always make decisions that put the public finances on a stable footing. So I can't say to you on your show, here's a blank cheque. We need to see what the government figures are, what the government's financial projections are, before we make a judgment.
Okay. Jonathan, what do you think they've done or achieved so far with levelling up? I mean, you mentioned connectivity between west and east there, between Liverpool and Leeds across Manchester. This is about more than just HS2, but generally the government will blow their trumpets. They were on this morning, they were talking about museums and things they've given £1 million to and £500,000 to, but it all seemed very paltry and petty in comparison. Is levelling up happening or not?
No, of course it's not. There'll be a lot of your viewers who are watching this morning in places like Mansfield, Bolsover, Ashfield, Bury or Bolton. These are people who put their trust in the Conservatives for the first time ever because they were promised levelling up. And it's the biggest con ever, hasn't it? There isn't any levelling up. In fact, things have got worse. And it's people in places like Ashfield and Bolsover and Bury and Bolton and Barnsley. I don't know why I'm using all the B's, by the way. But it's people in towns across the Midlands and the North who are paying more on their mortgages because of Conservative decisions, are paying more in tax. 25 Tory tax rises under the Conservatives, and are paying more for petrol and their shopping. I think it's around £400 more for the average family. That's not levelling up. It's making people worse off across the Midlands and the North.
Let's talk about, you want to talk about growth and skills levy. Research has found that the Treasury is clawing back £500 million, £500 million for funding new apprenticeships. What evidence have you got for that?
Well, that's the official statistics, so it's not something we've made up. That's based on the statistics that the government have given us when we asked them for those statistics. And this links back to your question on levelling up. If you want to level up Ashfield, if you want to level up Salford, Bury and places across the north, Rotherham, you've got to invest in reskilling and retraining our workers. We know that we've got a lot of people who are out of work who want to get into good jobs, and we know that there's lots of people already in work who could do more and could improve their wage packets if they got the training and the reskilling out there. But this red tape that the government have introduced is making it harder for businesses to invest in reskilling their workers. And this is something businesses have asked for. This is something businesses are calling for. And we work very closely with businesses because we're the party of business. We're the party of business. We're the party of economic growth. And if you can do this, you can get people into good jobs and spread prosperity across the country.
Jonathan Ashers, thanks for your time this morning. We've got to leave you because the Prime Minister has been speaking.
Yes, indeed. He's been at a community centre in Hertfordshire taking questions about all of the top stories of the day, including the HS2 project. Let's have a listen in to the news just in from the Prime Minister.
government's Community Ownership Fund. It's a fantastic scheme that supports local communities to take over prized assets like community centres like this, sports clubs or pubs in rural villages that need saving, and in doing so support local communities, bring them together and provide fantastic services for all their residents. We've got almost 200 such projects like this across the country, a great example of us levelling up and investing in local communities.
So we're here for levelling up. How does levelling up square with axing the northern leg of HS2?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that type of speculation, but what I would say is we're absolutely committed to levelling up and spreading opportunity around the country, not just in the north, but in the Midlands and all other regions of our fantastic country as well. And transport infrastructure is a key part of that, but not just big rail projects, also local projects, improving local bus services, fixing potholes. All of these things make a difference to people's day-to-day lives, and that's what the government is getting on doing with record amounts of funding.
There's huge anxiety up north about HS2. Will it get the go-ahead to manage to say yes or no?
Well, again, this kind of speculation that people are making is not right. I mean, we've got spades in the ground, we're getting on and delivering, but across the north, what we're also doing is connecting up all the towns and cities in the north, east to west. That's a really important part of how we will create jobs, drive growth across the region, all part of our plans to level up. Free ports are another good example of that, whether that's in Teesside or elsewhere, attracting new investment, new businesses coming in, all good examples of the government levelling up.
On two other issues quickly, will armed police get better legal protections to do their job?
Well, our firearms officers do an incredibly difficult job. They're making life or death decisions in a split second to keep us safe, and they deserve our gratitude for their bravery. Now, it's important when they're using these legal powers that they do so with clarity and they have certainty about what they're doing, especially given the lethality that they are using. That's why the Home Secretary's asked her department to review the guidance that the officers are operating under to make sure that it is robust and that it commands the confidence not just of the officers but of the public as well. Obviously, I wouldn't be right for me to speculate on ongoing cases, but that's what we're doing.
And just finally, are you drawing up plans to cut inheritance tax?
No, I never would comment on tax speculation, of which there's always plenty, but what I would say is that the most important tax cut I can deliver for the British people is to halve inflation. It's inflation that's putting up prices of things, inflation that's eating into people's savings and making them feel poorer, and the quicker we get inflation down, the better for everybody. We are making progress. We saw that in the most recent numbers. The plan is working, but we've got to stick to the plan to bring inflation down, and that is the best way to help people with the cost of living.
PM, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that was just in there for us, the Prime Minister speaking at a community centre in Hertfordshire on all of the big issues of the day. Absolutely adamant that indeed levelling up is happening and refusing to be pushed on whether or not HS2 will be scrapped. And, of course, talking about this firearms officers issue, saying that he totally supports his Home Secretary and calling for a review in all of that.
Our plan is to speak to the husband of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, who'll be telling us how running has changed his life.
People say that, don't they?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're doing wrong.
It might well be. This is Breakfast on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're finishing off the programme today by talking about Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. Actually, we're talking about her husband, Richard. It's been a year and a half since Nazanin was released after years of detention in Iran.
And yesterday, Nazanin and her husband joined thousands of people taking part in a 10K charity run in London. And I'm pleased to say that Richard has hot-footed his way from the run here to join us in the studio. Good morning to you, Richard, and how lovely to see you in better circumstances, because we did speak to you prior to Nazanin's release here in the studio. A very stressful time for you. Lots of legacy problems in terms of probably mental health and all the rest of it. How has running actually been a sort of balancing part of your life and dealing with all of this?
Yeah, you're right. It's lovely to be here, to be retired, and to be normal with a smile on my face. And as you say, your viewers will have watched me campaigning and battling and being miserable on the telly in different forms. When that's over, there's a sort of a euphoric bit, and it's lovely, and then there's a kind of a catching up with the rest of life, and I spent years following down a tunnel of just battling about one thing and neglecting things physical, things mental, things. So actually, it was really good for me to start to. I mean, we did this run, and the reason I did it was because the guy who came back with Nazanin on the plane, Anusher Shuri, he ran in prison. And when he came out, he ran the marathon. What, just running around a courtyard, round and round, training for a marathon? Well, I think probably just keeping sane at the beginning. So just, again, he was in his mid-60s, got picked up, quite heavy, drank too much beer. Suddenly all that stops. And that, like, in prison, you can't control anything, really. And it's one of those things where what can you do to keep yourself sane? Well, for him, it was running. And at the beginning, it was probably once around the courtyard, then it became twice, and it was just such an inspiring story. Anyway, so we had him over for lunch after he'd done the marathon. We said, well, Richard, why don't you... And, of course, at the beginning, people say these things you don't really take. And I thought, well, actually, yeah, I can do it. So we did it together yesterday. And so, I had a 69-year-old pace setter that sort of took me around. But really good just to get back to normality. I think...
Well, I understand what you can do for running, but what can running do for you?
I think it's been really helpful. I mean, we were talking off air that partly, actually, for me during the campaign, you have this long, open-ended battle, you don't know how long it could be. And for me, it actually did remind me of if ever I went out jogging, where you just, I'll just go to the lamppost and then I'll allow myself a rest. Yeah. I'll just go a bit further. You break it into little stages and just keep it manageable. Sometimes you do have to walk a bit, sometimes you can run a bit. None of us are superheroes. So that kind of, for me yesterday, finishing it and think, well, actually, I did it. there were, 15,000 people there, all shapes and sizes, some much older, some much younger, some much faster, some not, but everyone sort of... And that being part of, we all help each other through, was a lovely thing to be part of.
But not all of them have come through a hunger strike.
No, we had different stories. There was some...
Is that affecting you? Is there any legacy from that?
Yes. An odd thing. So probably with a hunger strike, your body sort of withdraws into itself.
Yeah.
So like your fingers and hands and feet get cold and obviously if you stop eating for a while, your tummy takes a while to start working again. And those can last for a long time. And there's a kind of an emotional thing as well, where you withdraw into yourself. So learning empathy again, learning to the give and take of life that we all have to go through and listening, like all that took time.
Yeah.
And you'll have to ask the family as to whether I've quite fully got there.
Well, look, I'm not going to ask you about how things are with Nazanin, but I can only imagine when you've had a prolonged period apart, you've got a child and all of this, then you're back together, you have the euphoria. There's tensions there. I'm not suggesting there are, but I can't. Marriage is difficult anyway, isn't it? And we're all focusing very much on last week and the release of these Iranian hostages. Huge price, $6 billion, I think President Biden paid. All the euphoria happening at the moment for their families. But they will go through all of these same challenges that you have. What advice would you give to anybody coming out of that situation?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a big deal was done last week. It really brought me back to the memory of seeing Nazanin again and the kind of the disbelief, then the euphoria. And then you have that catch-up process, and you can only take it one day at a time. And learning to step out of battle mode. Learning to, take off the shells and you're right. Now we spent 6 years apart. It takes time to learn to, get a.
Well, you had your own traumas, didn't you? Which both of you probably can't understand the other person's trauma.
And can both trigger each other.
Yeah.
So I can do things that will then, make Nazanin feel less safe, and equally she can do things. And those things where, when you're in survival mode, you're not in empathy, cooperation mode, you're in survival mode. So that takes time, and that will be ahead of them.
Well, you're there to encourage people to get into the headspace of running and what it can do for people. Would Nazanin be one of those people? Would you be encouraging her?
I have been encouraging her. Haven't yet got her to do too much running.
Oh, we said she'd done the run, but she didn't. She was on the sidelines.
Yeah. We're certainly keeping an option open for the next one. But
Can I ask you just on the political point about paying for hostages to be released? I mean, do you think that endangers more people? Do you think that it means that it's more worthwhile for these people to take hostages briefly, if you will?
Yes and no is the short answer. I think without doubt, every time a hostage deal happens, it creates a moral hazard.
Yeah.
At the same time, you do need to bring people home. So I think it's not about the transaction, but the what are we doing to discourage hostage-taking is a proper policy issue that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Listen, it's lovely talking to you. It's really very nice to be sitting talking to you about a relaxation thing or a mental health thing and running. And I hope you enjoy your running.
Thank you. Maybe next time.
And all the best to little Gabriella. I think she's 9 now, isn't she?
9,
she's got her mummy home. It's just lovely.
Got her opinions.
Of course.
Richard Ratcliffe, thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, there we go with the time just creeping up towards 9:25. We'll say adios to you. Back from 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Up next, it's Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Emily.
Have a good day.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, we will see some sunnier and brighter moments, but watch out for Wednesday. Could turn very windy for some of us. Back to the here and now. Lots of sunshine out there, actually, across parts of England and Wales. Still maybe a little bit of overnight rain and cloud just to clear the very far southeast. But for most of us, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the main bulk of the showers, and some of these could potentially be quite heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. And still quite windy here. That will temper the temperatures somewhat, but down towards the southeast, feeling quite warm, highs reaching 22 or 23 degrees. Into the evening, a lot of England and Wales remaining dry. Still the risk of some showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland, especially across more western areas. Elsewhere, under the clear skies, we could see some mist and fog also forming. And then later on in the night, just starting to potentially see some heavy showers working in across the very far south coast of England. A mild night for all of us, temperatures staying firmly in double figures. So these showers will then track their way northwards across parts of England as we go through the course of the morning. Elsewhere, once any early mist and fog clears, briefly drier and brighter, but then further Bands of rain moving in from the west, which will be accompanied again by some fairly strong winds, heaviest of the rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. But despite the wind, it's going to be another fairly mild one. Temperatures high teens in the north, low 20s in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Should I put it out there? Could be getting a lot more work.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.